This world, ruled by the most powerful swordsmen and wizards, is the continent of courage. A major war is currently raging here as the Demon Queen has challenged all races. With the crushing power of the Demon Queen, her army's attack was like a hurricane, sweeping away everything in its path. The cities of all races were destroyed one after another, and soon only the human race remained. But after the rebellion of the human race in Neijiang, the last line of defense completely collapsed. Humanity was defeated. Thus, the strongest demon queen in history, Elizabeth, became the sole ruler of the world. But still, in the capital of the human race, there were those who did not give up until the very end. They hoped that victory would be theirs. The man was furious, shouting at Elizabeth not to think she had won. He was certain the future was still on their side, and the legendary hero would defeat her once and for all. Malfoy approached the man. He angrily struck the man, causing him to fall to the ground. The prince approached Mr. Barlow and asked him to express himself more clearly. He said the queen was not asking his opinion now. He also grinned and said it was an order, and asked Mr. Barlow if he understood. Mr. Barlow said he was being foolish. He also looked at the prince and said he was a traitor to humanity, and that he had wasted his time training and raising him to be a legendary hero. In the blink of an eye, the prince changed his form. He was furious, believing Mr. Barlow was talking complete nonsense. He looked at the gentleman and said that if he missed his filthy father, he would send him to him immediately. A moment later, the demon queen flew up to them and ordered her servant to stop. In the blink of an eye, the prince stopped and did not deliver a crushing blow. The demon queen looked at the men present, furious. Looking at Mr., she asked if she had heard him correctly, that the future was on their side and she would be defeated. Looking at the man with disdain, the demon Queen Elizabeth told him to tell her everything in detail. She pierced those present with a fierce look and said that if he did not tell her anything, she would make him feel torment worse than death. The man looked at the demon queen and said that the vision said that when the legendary hero draws the holy sword, it will be the end of the demon's reign. He said the holy sword was the very one that was embedded in the stone platform in the main hall. In a trembling voice, he said he would never tell the queen, and he would never betray the human race. The demon queen stared at Excalibur. She was surprised. The demon queen wondered if the brave hero who drew this sword could challenge the king. The demon queen was interested in the question and also in the answer to it. The demon queen glanced sideways at the man and said with a smirk that in that case, she would wait for the hero here. The reign of the demon queen Elizabeth is 1 year. Elizabeth's reign lasted 2 years. The reign was quiet. The reign of the demon queen Elizabeth lasts 4 years. 15 years had passed since the beginning of the demon queen's reign. Under the demon queen's absolute rule, all old and unequal rules between the races were abolished, and everyone was able to live together as equals. There were no more conflicts. Everyone could live and develop in peace. And soon the continent of courage entered a period of unprecedented prosperity. An alliance against the legendary heroes emerged, who vehemently opposed the arrival of the so-called heroes, fearing that the fragile peace would be destroyed. The demon queen gathered all representatives of the human race in her castle in the capital. She wanted to tell them important news. The demon queen looked intently at everyone present and asked them if they had heard any news of the legendary hero. Demon Queen Elizabeth wanted to know if they had any news. Elven minister Twyla said the elves had sent out every tree and insect to search, and there were still no traces. Dwarven minister Heimerdinger said they weren't very good at gathering information, but according to information they received from gun stores, they hadn't found any suspicious people. The human minister Aristotle said he believed that even if this brave man appeared, he would try to fight them all using only his own strength, and that would not be enough. Minister Lim of the demon race whispered that Aristotle was new here and therefore didn't know everything. Lim said he wasn't afraid of the legendary warrior. On the contrary, she wanted him to come. To understand the prophecy, the queen meticulously studied all forms of ancient magic and martial arts. The minister of the orc race, Mughal, said that if Her Majesty wanted, she could destroy the entire continent of courage in an instant. The elven minister looked at everyone present and told them not to talk nonsense, as Barlow was to blame for everything. She said they were all lucky to have Her Majesty as their ruler. and they would kill this hero. The minister of the dwarf race looked with disdain at Barlow's arrival. Close to the current imperial family, current president of the Demon Queen's fan club, president of the association opposing the legendary hero. Barlow burst into the hall, shouting, "Down with the heroes!" He shouted that he supported the Demon Queen's reign and opposed the rise of the legendary brave hero. The Demon Queen Elizabeth dealt one of her blows to the man. The Demon Queen came closer to him and told him to explain the prophecy to her and also tell her where exactly the hero was. Barlow said it was impossible to say exactly when an object transcends the understanding of prophecy, just like Her Majesty. The prince approached the queen and smiled, saying it was foolish to believe his prophecies. He also assured her that she shouldn't worry, as he was working on new research. The queen was in no mood to listen to others. She angrily struck her servant. Turning her back to him, she angrily told him to get out of her sight. He irritated her, and she didn't want to see him. The servant apologized to the queen in a trembling voice. He hadn't meant to anger her. The Demon Queen was furious. A few minutes later, she furiously struck the man, hurling him into a stone wall. She looked at him and said with disdain that she was a queen, that she had reached the pinnacle of this world and ruled over it. She waited for a hero to come fight her, to make him the next step on the path to her glory. The Demon Queen studied the most ancient magic books of the continent of courage, and after countless hours of painstaking work, she created divine magic, waiting for him to challenge her. The Demon Queen was furious, having neither heard nor seen the hero anywhere. Elizabeth moved closer to the sword. She knew that if it wasn't coming to her, she would have to find it herself. Everyone present was terrified. Representatives of various races were shocked by what the Demon Queen was about to do. In trembling voices, they told her not to do it. The Demon Queen had put in a lot of effort. She was very angry and desperately wanted to find the hero herself immediately. The Demon Queen exerted all her strength to pull out the coveted sword. The minister of the elf race was shocked. She did not believe that the Demon Queen was going to pull out the holy sword on her own. A moment after the Demon Queen exerted all her strength to draw the sword, a violent force appeared in the sky. The queen succeeded in drawing the divine sword from the stone. Demon Queen, laugh a little. She wanted to know and see the man who said only a legendary hero could pull the sword from the stone. A moment later, when she touched the sword, the queen saw the hero's location. She was surprised, but at the same time, very glad to have seen where he was hiding. The Demon Queen Elizabeth was already looking forward to the battle with the legendary hero. The Demon Queen used abyssal magic to force teleportation. She wanted to get to him faster so she could crush him with her might and show him all she was capable of. Her servant was in shock, and all he could do was shout after her. The servant rushed after her with a cry. He frantically wished that the queen would allow him to continue serving her. The servant rushed after his queen, wanting to travel with her and help her on her difficult journey. But unfortunately, his attempts were unsuccessful. He was very upset. For several minutes, he repeated her name in a trembling voice. At the same time, in the newcomers' village, everything was calm and quiet, without any incidents. The young man worked with enthusiasm. The legendary hero was very happy, as farming brought him peace. His name used to be Li Pin. He was an ordinary office worker, living a boring life. He had no interest in anime or games. He believed his only joy was watching videos on his way to work. He watched a video on how to properly fertilize the soil. The young man also watched a video on how to cook food properly. He also enjoyed watching videos on how to properly care for different animals. The young man was happy about this and was excited. Pin knew that he would be very happy if he could live the same life as in the video. Sometime later, his thoughts and desires came true, and he found himself in another world. The young man was shocked by everything that was happening, as he had not expected such a thing. But under the guidance of the beginner system, he gradually mastered the skills of survival here. In fact, he knew nothing about this world, but it didn't matter to him because he'd always dreamed of such a life. He thought his body was much healthier than it had been when he worked in an office. He really liked this life, and he thought that everything in it was wonderful and did not want to leave anywhere at all. But he still received notifications. They told him that if he left the newcomer village, he would meet many different people. From them, he could learn various sword and magic skills to become a legendary hero and slay the Demon Queen. They asked him to begin his adventure. The young man was a little puzzled. He had no intention of killing any Demon Queen. Looking at the notification, it wasn't he who asked if he could simply continue living in such a place. Because he liked it that way, the system continued to urge him to leave the village and go on adventures. But it seemed the system could do no more than pester him with its messages. He had no desire to kill the queen. He simply wanted to live a carefree life forever. The village was shrouded in a special time barrier. It completely concealed the newcomer's village for safety, and within it, the day lasted much longer than 24 hours, allowing him to do what he enjoyed most. The young man was engaged in agriculture. Lepin went hunting every day. In his spare time, he studied the craft. The young man knew nothing about balls or magic, but he knew it didn't matter at all since he wasn't going on adventures. He also studied meditation. By exchanging points earned from beginner quests, he gradually built his ideal country house. Sometime later, the system suddenly broke down and disappeared. But the young hero wasn't upset, as it only played into his hands. The young man worked all day and was very hungry, just like a wolf. As he approached the firewood, he noticed that it was running low and knew that he needed to gather some wood first. Coming closer to the firewood, he remembered that he had forgotten to take an axe from the forest when he chopped firewood in the morning. A moment later, he heard a strange roar in the sky. Raising his head, he saw a strange and terrifying sight. The clouds above him began to thicken. And something strange was happening. The young man was shocked. He couldn't believe his eyes, as he was so frightened. But he still understood that this was somehow connected to him. A moment later, he saw the Demon Queen appear in the sky. The Demon Queen looked at him intently and said with a smirk that she had finally found the legendary hero. The young man was in shock. He ran and screamed furiously because he knew that for no apparent reason it would start pouring down like buckets, and his clothes and dried fish were on the street. The Demon Queen was in shock. She did not understand what was happening, because from afar, she saw that the legendary hero started to run. The young man was very glad that he was lucky enough to have managed to put away his things and fish in time. Otherwise, his fish and sausages would have spoiled. Vankai, a mechanical companion dog, barked furiously at the intruder. Lepin looked at his pet and told him to stop barking because it was going to rain soon and they needed to go inside. The mechanical pet dog kept barking and signaling to its owner. The young man stared at the sky. Without taking his eyes off the silhouette in the sky, the young man turned to his dog and asked what was up there in the sky. The Demon Queen was angry at the hero. She looked at him and said with contempt that he was stupid, and also asked how dare he address her so dismissively. The young man was surprised, looked at her with bewilderment, and apologized for not having noticed her immediately. He was deeply surprised, as he couldn't understand how anyone else could have appeared in the village. He knew the village should be completely safe. The Demon Queen looked at him and said that she wanted to check something first. The young man was shocked, unable to comprehend what they were talking about. Elizabeth looked at him and struck the first blow. With lightning speed, she threw her sword at him. The young man was so terrified that he covered his face with his hands. The Demon Queen was surprised because she didn't expect this. She looked at him intently and saw that her blow had missed him. He looked at the sword in surprise, as he did not expect it to end up in his hands. A moment later, he was already confident, but he held the holy sword in his hands. But after a few minutes, he finally came to his senses. He was terribly frightened and didn't understand why the holy sword had flown straight into his hands. The young man looked at the Demon Queen and, with a trembling voice, asked her what was going on. Elizabeth knew the holy sword's recognition couldn't be wrong. She noticed that his resistance to magic was so low that even ordinary soldiers were superior to him. She thought he might simply be hiding his true power. She looked at him and said that she was the Demon Queen, the strongest in history, and today she intended to destroy him. The young man was shocked and didn't understand why the Demon Queen was right in front of him. He hadn't even left the newcomer village. Yet she had come to him. The mechanical dog kept barking at the Demon Queen. The young man was shocked and yelled at his pet. He didn't want it to provoke the Demon Queen. The Demon Queen directed abyssal magic at the young hero. The young man was in shock. He didn't want to fight the Demon Queen at all. The young man stared at the Demon Queen. noticing she had used extermination magic. He realized that, as the system had said, the hero's encounter with the Demon Queen was inevitable, even if he never left the newcomer village. The young man knew he had nothing more to say to her. With lightning speed, he tossed the sword aside. A moment later, he walked quickly towards the house. He knew he was still just a noob, but now the final boss was knocking on his door. He didn't know what to do except accept his fate. The young man thought that soon he would be happy with this outcome. He did not regret anything, since he was able to spend his time here happily. At least he wanted to be allowed to turn into nothing along with his native home. The Demon Queen was shocked when she saw the young man smile and enter the house. She didn't know what he meant with that smile. Elizabeth saw everything that was happening in a different light. She pointed out that he wanted her to show him everything she was capable of. She was furious because she was surprised by his behavior. All she could do was shout after him and call him unflattering names. In the blink of an eye, the Demon Queen turned her fury on his house. The mechanical pet began its calculations as an incredible force of force flew toward its home. After he finished his calculations, he prepared himself and entered combat mode. The mechanical dog parried the Demon Queen's blow with lightning speed. A powerful explosion and a loud roar echoed through the sky. The defender of the house growled menacingly at the queen. Elizabeth looked at the dog and smiled. As she expected, the legendary hero looked down on her. She thought he seemed to be relying on a high-level, sentient mechanical device. She was very angry. She knew that he could not compare with her greatness and her strength. She looked at the dog and said she was no longer interested in testing him. The Demon Queen wanted to finish him off quickly. The Demon Queen gathered all her power and dealt a powerful blow. The mechanical dog completed its calculations and prepared to repel the attack. The mechanical dog gathered its power and struck back at the Demon Queen. The Demon Queen looked at the mechanical creature and said with disdain that all of its reflection attacks were useless. Elizabeth smirked and said that he should simply obediently disappear along with this land. With the power of the Demon Queen, a quantum black hole opened in the sky. But in the blink of an eye, the hero's pet repelled the attack and closed the quantum black hole. The Demon Queen was shocked, as her divine magic was destroyed in the blink of an eye and without any effort. The Demon Queen looked down on the mechanical dog and didn't understand how he did it. The hero, in turn, lay in bed, preparing for death. He said with a smile that the Demon Queen could come for him now, since he was already ready. The Demon Queen decided to go down to the mechanical dog and look at it. The pet, in turn, barked furiously at the stranger. The Demon Queen looked at the mechanical dog with surprise and intentness. The mechanical dog frowned and glared at the queen. The Demon Queen laughed. This had taken her by surprise, and she had underestimated her opponent. Elizabeth glared at the dog and told him not to be so overconfident. She pointed out that she had only been using a third of her strength so far. The Demon Queen was furious. She said she would now show him everything she was capable of and show him what true horror was. The Demon Queen used the highest form of demonic essence. An hour later, the young man lay quietly and peacefully in his bed. When he woke up, he thought that he had most likely died. Looking around, the young man was surprised as he noticed that he was still in his house. The young man approached the door and heard a soft, calm sound. He realized it was very quiet outside. He thought the Demon Queen probably wouldn't be waiting for him like a maniac. The young man slowly opened the door. Hiding behind the door, he peered out. Through the veil of smoke, the young man saw a vague silhouette. A moment later, he saw the Demon Queen holding a mechanical dog in her hand. A few minutes later, the Demon Queen crushed and destroyed the dog. The young man was surprised. He looked closely at everything that was happening and shouted out the dog's name. With the speed of lightning, the queen threw the dog aside and walked towards the hero. The Demon Queen looked angrily at the hero and said that she was very sorry, as she had completely destroyed the magical device that he was so proud of. The young man looked at the Demon Queen, puzzled and frightened. In a trembling voice, he said everything was fine and asked if they could sit and talk quietly with her. She looked at the hero. She said that they could, of course, talk, but right after she killed him. The Demon Queen was incredibly angry with him, as he had driven her to this state and then simply walked away calmly, looking at her. She wondered if this was the end destined for her. The Demon Queen walked slowly towards the hero, but unfortunately for her, she fell on the way. The young man was puzzled by the fact that she simply fell to the ground. He shouted and called her. The young man ran up to the demon queen with lightning speed, picked her up, and asked if she was okay. A few minutes later, the demon queen began to transform into her original form. Her appearance began to change, and she appeared before the hero completely naked. The young man was shocked by everything that was happening. The demon queen slept quietly and peacefully in her bed. When she woke up, she was in shock, as she did not understand how she, the demon queen, could have suffered such a humiliating defeat. The demon queen was shocked, as she noticed that instead of taking the chance to kill her, the hero simply tied her hands. She thought he did it to demonstrate his power to her. The demon queen wanted to free herself from the shackles that bound her hands. But unfortunately, she was defeated when she tried to use her power. Elizabeth was puzzled by this fact. She saw another legendary class item that she had never seen before. The Demon Queen was very angry with the hero. She wanted to know what power he was really hiding from her. She knew all these strange things were definitely happening for a reason. She thought the hero seemed far more cunning than she imagined. She knew she had underestimated his abilities. Entering the room, the young man saw that the Demon Queen had awakened. He held food for her in his hands. The Demon Queen looked at the hero with a cold, vicious gaze. She said that if he wanted to kill her, he should do it immediately. But she also said that he shouldn't expect her to beg for his mercy. The young man noticed that the Demon Queen truly inspired fear, but he knew this was his only chance to survive, and he had to take it. He looked at her with bewilderment and, his voice trembling, asked if they could talk. The young man came closer to her and said that he would like to talk about the handcuffs since he put them on just in case, since she was very scary and she should know about it. A moment later, he realized he'd made a mistake, and she might have taken his words differently. He looked at her, puzzled, and said he meant she was very strong. The Demon Queen looked at him, puzzled and questioning. The young man looked at her intently and said with a smile that he thought there had been a misunderstanding. He said he would remove her handcuffs and they would talk quietly. But to his regret, Elizabeth saw things differently. The Demon Queen saw his smirk and the way he apologized to her, as she had misunderstood from the very beginning. He was asking her if she thought she was strong enough to challenge him. The Demon Queen saw his evil smile. The hero told her that was out of the question. He told her that she could defeat him, but if she wanted to live, she would have to do everything. The Demon Queen was furious. She didn't understand how he dared to threaten her. A few minutes later, the young man approached her and unfastened the handcuffs. He said he did so to prove his ill-intentioned behavior, as he wanted to speak quietly with her. The Demon Queen knew she was at a disadvantage. She knew strong personalities knew when to give in, so she was willing to tolerate him for now. But later, she knew he would regret acting so arrogantly toward her. In a trembling voice, the young man said that she needed to rest first. Lapin didn't kill the Demon Queen while she was unconscious, because in this world of swords and magic, it's perfectly natural for her, as the Demon Queen, to possess the skill of resurrection. The young man was shocked because killing chickens and fish for soup was one thing, but he could never kill a person or even a Demon Queen. He knew that to resolve the conflict between the hero and the queen, it was not necessary to resort to murder or fighting. The young man wanted to convince her that he was not a threat and could be her friend, in which case they could live happily. The young man was deep in thought, counting on his flawless plan. He didn't notice he was laughing out loud. The Demon Queen looked at him, puzzled, and noticed he was mocking her. The young man looked at his pet and noticed that after the fight with the queen, he had turned into a pile of rubbish. The Demon Queen looked at the young hero in surprise. She asked, surprised, what the thing was, realizing it was his most powerful magical device. The young man was a little puzzled. He didn't understand what magical device they were talking about, since he'd made the pet out of boredom while living in his own house. The young man smiled and said that was a fair way to put it, since he'd created Vankai himself. The queen knew he was being too careless. Since her release, she'd been able to secretly tap into the abyss's magic, an infinite magical force, to restore herself in the blink of an eye. The queen knew that losing her most powerful magical device was like losing her right arm. She knew the scales were tipped in her favor. Elizabeth looked at Lo. Pin looked at him menacingly and asked him to forgive her for breaking his thing. Pin calmly said that there was nothing to worry about since the memory card was still intact. The Demon Queen was extremely angry. She knew this was the perfect moment to get rid of the legendary hero forever. She wanted to use apocalypse magic. The young man said quietly and calmly that the dog could not be fixed. With lightning speed, he walked to the closet and opened it. With a smile, he said that he had prepared for such an eventuality, so she didn't need to worry about such a thing. The Demon Queen was furious. She did not expect such a turn of events. The young man took one of the dogs. He slowly loaded the memory card into it. A moment later, the dog started working and jumped with joy. The young man said with a smile that it was more fun with a companion, but sometimes he doesn't listen, so he usually only plays with one. The Demon Queen didn't hear his words that he had spoken earlier in her head. He and the dog were mocking her. The Demon Queen was shocked by this turn of events. She saw the robot dog's menacing and angry gaze. The shocked Demon Queen collapsed onto the bed. She was in shock, as she hadn't known such a thing was possible. A moment later, she was distracted by the smell of fresh food. She was shocked and didn't know what smelled so delicious. The young man looked at her and said that she had lost consciousness, so he had prepared some food to warm her up after she woke up. The young man prepared ordinary dumplings and ordinary porridge. The Demon Queen looked closely at the food and said that only the weak needed food. She said that she had reached the highest state and had no need for such things. But the smell of delicious food still lured her. The young man knew that any conflict could be resolved with delicious food. He looked at her and, without a smile, said that he had prepared everything from vegetables and grains he had grown himself, and that everything was natural. Smiling, he asked her to try some. The Demon Queen slowly decided to try some food. She ate slowly and deliberately. The young man was puzzled, though confident in his culinary abilities. But whether the Demon Queen would appreciate the food of the newcomers from the village, he didn't know. The Demon Queen ate leisurely and enjoyed her meal. With each bite, the meat revealed its natural flavor. She felt a high concentration of magical energy. The Demon Queen was shocked, realizing such a delicacy actually existed in the world. She savored the taste, but she, the Demon Queen, still couldn't bring herself to swallow the last bite. After she swallowed the last piece, her inner world literally exploded. For the Demon Queen, such food was very spicy in taste. With a trembling voice, she asked the heroes what he had added to the food. The young man was shocked. He hadn't expected such a reaction. He said in a trembling voice that he'd added a little chili. The young man, puzzled, looked at her and asked if she by any chance could tolerate spicy food. The queen was very angry. She knew the young man was up to something. She knew he had imprisoned her here only to conduct his experiments on her. The young man realized he needed to get out of this awkward situation quickly. He looked at her and told her to try another dish next. The young man pointed out rice porridge with century-old eggs and plain meat. He said it would help soothe the burning sensation and neutralize the spiciness. The Demon Queen just laughed. She was a little confused, as he had first poisoned her and then given her the antidote. But she knew there was nothing she could do, as she felt a strange sensation and it was too unpleasant for her. The Demon Queen realized she had no choice. She began to eat. The Demon Queen slowly took the spoonful of food and brought it to her mouth. The Demon Queen was shocked because she felt bliss and she felt very good. She felt the urge for world domination, the struggle between the Demon Queen and the hero. None of that mattered to her anymore. The Demon Queen let go of everything and wanted to live a carefree life. It was through this that she discovered how insignificant she really was. Elizabeth, the three-tiered Demon Queen, had reached a new level. The Demon Queen felt a startling sensation as the food transported her to a completely different world. Under the influence of the two stimulants, her strength increased. The Demon Queen looked at the young hero intently. She told him to stop pretending and also asked what he really wanted from her. The young man was a little confused, unsure of what she was talking about or what she wanted to hear. He looked at her and timidly said he simply wanted to find out how a Demon Queen and a hero could coexist in peace. The Demon Queen saw him differently. She was even glad he had finally revealed his true intentions. She saw him tell her that she was the only one in this world suitable for his research. He told her to help him, to make her stronger, and then he wanted to fight her. The young man looked at her and asked if this was acceptable. He also said that he would continue to cook delicious food for her. The Demon Queen was very angry with the young man. She knew that the knight could be killed, but not disgraced. The Demon Queen saw the hero mocking her. He said that if she wanted to become stronger, he would help her. He also eagerly awaited the moment when she would defeat him. The Demon Queen sighed heavily and told him to forget about it. Lupin was shocked. He didn't understand what she was asking him to forget. He thought she probably still wanted to kill him. The Demon Queen slowly climbed onto the bed. She looked at him and told him with fury to listen to the words. That is, to treat them with all respect and reverence. The Demon Queen said that she would accept his conditions, but she also told him to know that she was not doing this out of fear, but to increase her power. The young man was surprised. He didn't understand what she was talking about. He knew she was the Demon Queen and possessed immense power. He knew she could do whatever she wanted to him. The Demon Queen glared at him and said that he shouldn't think she would bow her head and submit to him as long as she lived with him. She said with fury that she couldn't lose her dignity before him. She spoke of us with rage, that even if she had to sacrifice everything, she would still wipe him off the face of the earth. The young man was frightened. He said in a trembling voice that he understood everything, and also asked her to try to get along. The Demon Queen looked at the hero and said that if he was still going to conduct his research, then he should feel free to come to her. The Demon Queen looked at the hero with a terrifying smile and said that if there was anything tasty left, she would eat it all. The young man looked at her puzzledly and agreed. The Demon Queen and the hero lived in the newcomer village. A year later, the young man leisurely chopped wood with his sword. He was shocked and deeply confused, unsure what to do. The legendary hero was in a difficult situation, which only worsened over time. Ever since the Demon Queen invaded his village and destroyed the barrier protecting the newcomer village, the time here had been rapidly synchronizing with the time of the outside world. The young man was very puzzled. He knew that this was not the problem, since the village had lost its protective function and became completely open to wild inhabitants. And the monsters that appeared nearby don't seem so simple. But because of the Demon Queen's presence, they didn't dare approach. He was afraid, knowing that once she left the village, he would likely be defenseless against them. The young man heard the Demon Queen calling him. Elizabeth was shocked, shouting that it was lunchtime. She screamed, wanting to know immediately why nothing was ready for her yet. Lupin was puzzled. He said that he was already on his way and would immediately prepare everything. The young hero still knew that he needed her protection now. The Demon Queen sat on the couch, watching TV. The Demon Queen told the young hero she was tired of watching the same old thing. She asked him if he couldn't find something new in the system. The young man, puzzled, said that the system had long since disappeared. He also said that he had prepared dinner and she could go and eat. The Demon Queen slowly rose from the sofa and said that she was coming now. Elizabeth used her magic and took flight. The young man was surprised. Demonov glared at him and asked what kind of poison he'd put in the chips. She said she felt like the more she ate them, the lazier she became. She was furious, realizing he'd used delicious food to disguise a slow-acting poison to weaken her and ultimately destroy her. But she still wouldn't let that happen to her. The young man looked at her and said with a smile that these chips were high in calories, and if you eat too many of them, you can easily gain weight. The Demon Queen looked closely at herself and was surprised. She hadn't noticed how she'd gained extra pounds. A moment later, with the snap of her finger, she used abyssal magic on herself. The Demon Queen looked at the young man and said that all the fat accumulated in her body had been converted into magical power. The young man was surprised. Her magical abilities astounded him. He hadn't even expected magic to be used like that. The Demon Queen looked at him and smiled, telling him that another of his tricks had been foiled. She also asked how he felt afterward and if he was disappointed. The young man smiled and said she was right, and also said they could begin eating. The Demon Queen stared at the food, smiling as she said she was enjoying today's dinner very much too. Elizabeth was eager to begin eating immediately. The young man watched her intently as she ate with lightning speed. He didn't think much of the task, but he looked at her and told her she could take her time and eat more slowly. The young man looked at her and said that if that wasn't enough, he could make more. It wouldn't affect her anyway. He felt as if he'd been living with the Demon Queen for years. The Demon Queen was a little confused, unsure what he was trying to convey with his words. She saw him in a different light. She knew he was saying she was too weak and needed to get fat before he killed her. Lepin said with a smile that he would go and bring more dessert. The Demon Queen was incredibly angry. She told herself she'd had enough. She didn't understand why he treated her like a pig. She'd leveled up over 10 times in the past year, so now she could challenge him. The Demon Queen wanted to fight him to the death. The young man smiled and said that today she had her favorite pudding. The Demon Queen's expression instantly changed. She looked at him and said with a smile that it was absolutely magnificent. She wanted him to give it to her right then and there. Lepin was overjoyed, as luckily the Demon Queen was very easy to deal with. She could easily be calmed with delicious food. The man and the young girl ran away from their pursuers with lightning speed. They were being chased by strange creatures. The man was furious, running like lightning, but one creature decided to attack him from above. The creature struck, tearing apart space. A moment later, it created a trap with its claws. The man angrily took up his sword and shielded his companion with his body. He glanced sideways at Elif and said he would delay them. He told her to flee to the city, as she would be safe there. Elif looked at the man with tears in her eyes and said that she could not do this because she could not leave him alone to fight monsters. The man was furious and said he had promised her mother that he would protect her no matter what. One of the monsters prepared for the attack. He summoned a ghostly flame. The man was furious and knew he had to end this quickly with his strongest technique. The man gathered all his strength and struck the hero. The monster was unable to parry such a powerful blow. The hero's blow cut the beast in half. But the monsters refused to give up and attacked the heroes. The young lady looked at her father and braced herself for the blow. She angrily declared that she had no intention of leaving him alone. Elif aimed an arrow of nature at the monster. The man looked at his daughter and said she couldn't handle the Dark Guild's apostles. He said he didn't know how long he could hold out, so he asked her to hurry up and leave. The apostles of the Dark Guild did not keep us waiting. They began to deal devastating blows with the speed of lightning. The Dark Guild apostle dealt a crushing blow to the man, sending him flying into the stone. Elif was in shock. She looked at her father with tears in her eyes. The man, in a trembling voice, told her not to worry about him and to leave quickly. A moment later, the monsters reunited and turned into one large and terrible beast. Elif looked at the huge monsters and with a trembling voice said that she would go with them. And she also asked to let her father go. The monster, in turn, refused to let the father and daughter go and attacked them. The young girl thought she would most likely die then and there. A moment later, they too were enveloped in a column of smoke and dust. The daughter and father were shocked because they saw the leader mammoth who helped them and killed the monster that was hunting them. An immortal toad was watching, sitting on the leader mammoth. The immortal toad looked at his friend and said that the danger had passed, and also asked what they should do with the harmless people. Van Kai looked at the toad from afar and told him not to harm the people. Van Kai said he would take them to their owner and let him decide what to do with them. The young girl woke up screaming. She screamed because she thought she was still on the battlefield. She woke up and saw that she was in an unknown place. She didn't know what this strange place was and was terribly frightened. She didn't see her father next to her. Elif remembered that he was seriously injured. She knew that if he didn't receive timely medical treatment, he could die. The young girl wanted to help her father immediately. With the speed of lightning, she jumped out of bed and ran to the door. With lightning speed, she opened the door and shouted to her father. The young lady saw her father safe and sound. She was surprised, as she didn't understand what was happening. Lepin was very surprised. He admired the man. Lepin looked at the man closely and said he must have trained hard to look so good. The man smiled and said that for a warrior, training is the foundation of everything. Lepin was very surprised as he realized that there was a warrior class in this world. He thought it was simply incredible. Lepin noticed his friend running around him and barking. The Demon Queen was furious. She didn't like the noise the dog was making. She struck furiously. In the blink of an eye, the dog was gone. The Demon Queen dealt a powerful and furious blow to the mechanical dog, sending it flying far away and flipping several times. The Demon Queen approached the dog, furious. Elizabeth, furious and indignant, asked the dog who had told her to drag all this rabble into the village. Van Kai, in turn, remembered how he had been destroyed by the Demon Queen before, and he had quietly whined while looking at the ground. Lepin walked up to the man and touched his muscles. He was shocked because he had never seen anything like it before. The man smiled and said that since Mr. Lepinu likes them, so he won't hide them either. The man took advantage of the 100% the flaming soul of a warrior. Lepin was shocked. Lepin looked intently at the man and in turn admired his beautiful body. Elif was shocked and didn't understand what was happening. She looked intently at her father and asked what he was doing. For a moment, there was a truly uneasy atmosphere between them. The man was overjoyed that his daughter had finally woken up. He looked at her and said that he was only trying to please their savior. Lepin, in turn, looked at the young lady with puzzlement, as he did not know how to explain everything that was happening to her. Unexpectedly, between Le the Demon Queen stood up to Pinom and Elif, she looked at the young people with contempt and anger and said that since the young lady had woken up, they could leave here. Elizabeth stepped closer to Elif and glared at her with a cold, angry gaze. The Demon Queen angrily retorted that she was merely warning her. The Demon Queen walked closer to the young lady and said angrily that she had come here first. The young lady was very frightened. She stared at the queen and could not answer. Lepin knew he needed to defuse the tense situation quickly. He looked at the young ladies and said they rarely had visitors, and he asked them to come inside and talk there. Leping looked at his guests and apologized for not being able to offer them anything better in this village. The young man explained that it was barley tea, which he had prepared himself. Smiling, he asked them to try it. The young lady looked at her father and asked if this was the magic potion he'd spoken of. She asked him if she understood correctly that it was something that would cure her as soon as she drank it. The young man smiled and said she was exaggerating, since he had simply given them cold well water to drink. The Demon Queen was angry and confused. She didn't understand why the hero had brought weaklings to their home. She didn't understand what kind of experiment he was planning. But she was even more infuriated by the fact that she wasn't enough for him. The man looked intently at everyone gathered and said that although he had lost consciousness then, he still vaguely remembered a lot of things. The man vaguely remembered how Van Kai had brought them to the island, and how Lepin gave him a magic potion to drink. As a result, he was filled with power. The man looked intently at his daughter and said that if it were not for the master's help, he would never have been able to see his beautiful daughter again. The young lady was very surprised and amazed. She looked closely at the cup and said it was a very valuable drink. She also asked if they could really drink it. The young man smiled and said it was very pleasant to talk to them. He smiled and said that they could have a drink. The man looked intently at the young man and thanked him. A moment after they drank the drink, they were illuminated by the power of magic. They were shocked because they felt like they were in a new world. The father and daughter were in shock. They had never experienced such a shock and an excellent feeling of freedom before. A moment later, they moved to a new level. The man looked at his daughter and said their magic had increased. Elif said even her mother's elven blood had awakened, causing her ears to perk up. They were astonished, as they hadn't expected to see another world. They sighed heavily and said that after they saw another world, nothing else mattered to them. The young man looked at his guests and said with a smile that he could pour them more. The man looked at Mr. Lowe tearfully. Pina. He said that was enough and they didn't need more. The man was shocked. He didn't understand who the master was. He knew they were just insignificant people and they couldn't bear this kind of shock. The young man was a little perplexed. He wanted to serve them drinks and snacks, but unfortunately, Elizabeth had taken them. He knew that if he tried to take the snacks and drinks by force, it might greatly anger the Demon Queen. The Demon Queen glared at the intruders and said the rest was hers. Elizabeth told them not to even think about it. The young man looked at them with bewilderment and sighed heavily. He said he had nothing more to offer them and asked for their forgiveness. Lepin looked at Uncle Burrs and asked why they were attacked. Uncle Burrs said that it was all because of the elven blood in the body of his beloved daughter. Elif said that her mother is a holy elf, fell in love with her father and gave birth to her, But according to the laws of the elves, they are forbidden from entering into interracial marriages. The young man looked at them and asked if he understood correctly that the elves were trying to grab them. The demon queen looked at them and declared that they were talking complete nonsense, as the ban on interracial marriage had long since been lifted after the demon queen united the world. Uncle Burrs said it was a long story before freedom. After Ilf's mother was forced to return to the elves' holy land, he took his daughter and hid. Lepin said he understood everything and asked if this meant the elves had learned of their existence and sent people to capture them. The young man was surprised, as he had imagined it was a Romeo and Juliet story from another world. The man said that thanks to his wife's sacrifice in returning to the elven tribe, they had decided to spare them. He said they were being pursued by envoys of a dark guild from the demon realm. The young man was surprised and glanced sideways at the demon queen. He had heard this from a story about a dark guild from the demon realm. The demon queen was very angry. She looked at the young man and asked what he meant by that. The young man, lightning fast, looked at her and begged for forgiveness. The demon queen looked at them and asked them to explain to her in more detail where the dark guild came from in the demon realm and why they were hunting elves. Uncle Bear said with a trembling voice that they said that a dark guild was conducting strange experiments on people, and they were trying to resurrect Elizabeth, the demon queen who once united the world. Elif looked at them and said that elves are one of the materials. Even she who did not awaken her blood became a target for them. Lepin glanced sideways at the demon queen. He quietly thought that they had called her name, and also asked her if she would continue to deny everything. The demon queen was incredibly angry. She grabbed the young man by the shirt with lightning speed and began shaking him. Elizabeth shook him, telling him she knew exactly what he was thinking. The young man looked at her intently and said in a trembling voice that he knew she had been here for a long time and that she had nothing to do with it. He smiled and asked her to calm down. Elif looked at her father and asked what they were talking about. He looked at his daughter and told her not to disturb them. The demon queen looked at them and said that it seemed to her that in just 1 year, enormous changes had occurred outside. She looked at them and asked who had told them that the demon queen was dead. The man looked at her and asked if it wasn't true. He said the demon queen hadn't been heard from for 500 years. And if she were still alive, she would have returned much sooner to rule the world. Lepin was shocked, as he hadn't expected 500 years to pass. He couldn't understand how this was possible when the demon queen had lived with him for just over a year. The demon queen looked at the guests present and asked if the rumors said exactly how the demon queen died. Elif looked at Elizabeth and said that according to the demon queen's records, Elizabeth was killed by the legendary hero. The man looked at Elizabeth and said that it was said that the battle lasted for a whole month, and in the end, the legendary hero sacrificed himself to protect the continent of courage and died along with the demon queen. The demon queen was so angry that she sent the guests to another world. Elif was terrified, looking sideways at her father and trembling. Her father, trembling, said that this wasn't peace, but pure murderous intent. The demon queen looked angrily at the guests and said that all these rumors were a complete lie. They looked at the queen and unanimously agreed with her statement, as they were very frightened. Lepin looked at them and, smiling, said she was right, as he was a legendary hero. He was sure of it, as the system had told him so before. His guests were shocked. They did not understand how this was possible, since according to rumors, he was dead. The young hero glanced sideways at Elizabeth and said that she was the demon queen they had spoken about earlier. The father and daughter were shocked by this flood of information. They hadn't expected it at all. Through Elizabeth's eyes, everything happened differently. She saw the hero mocking her. He said that the demon queen was imprisoned in such a place, thus making everyone laugh. Elizabeth was furious. She hit the table with lightning speed and told them to stop. She rose with lightning speed and walked to the door. She said with fury in her voice that she was no longer going to entertain them. The demon queen was shocked, realizing the hero had saved these people just to humiliate her in front of them. She was furious, realizing he'd gone too far. The demon queen hurried out into the street and slammed the door so loudly that the walls of the house cracked. Uncle Burrs looked at Lapina, apologized for disturbing them. He asked the gentleman what he planned to do with them next. Lepin, puzzled, said he didn't know. He said they needed to calm down first. The young man realized that apparently, after Elizabeth destroyed the time barrier, time in the village had become chaotic and stopped. Until synchronization occurred. That was 500 years ago. Elif looked at her father and whispered that she hadn't expected the story of 500 years ago to turn out like this. A demon queen had fallen in love with a legendary hero, renounced the world, and decided to hide. She said it was the same story as her father and mother. Her father looked at her and told her to keep her voice down, as they had no right to compare themselves to them. He said that the master had told her to calm down first. He said that they must be debating whether to spare them or not. The young lady looked at her father or whispered to him, if the master wanted to kill them, then why did he need to save them? Uncle Bars whispered that they'd accidentally helped them reach a new level with the sacred tea. That's why they almost killed them. He said that in their eyes, they were no different from insects, and whether to kill or spare them depended entirely on their mood. Lepin suddenly came into their room and said that it was already late. He looked at them and asked why they were still awake and what they were doing now. Elif looked at the gentleman with fear. She did not expect him to come to them at such a late hour. The young hero smiled and said that if they were not sleeping, they could play cards. Uncle Burrs was shocked, as he hadn't expected this. He hadn't expected the hero to invite them to a game of cards. Sometime later, the legendary hero explained the rules of the game to them, after which he asked if they understood everything. Uncle looked at him and said that they understood everything perfectly. Elif knew that the master would test them to determine whether to kill them or not. Lepin smiled and said that in that case, he would now deal the cards. Elif looked at the cards with caution as they emanated an ominous aura. She looked at Mr. Lay. Pina asked if she could ask him what the name of this game was. The young man looked at her in surprise. He said she had caught him off guard. After a while, he said he'd think about it and tell her. He knew the people of this world wouldn't understand the game's name. He looked at them and said with a smile that they could call this game a battle with a dragon. His guests were shocked and horrified by the game's name, as they had never heard such a terrifying title before. The demon queen used high-level concealment magic to spy on them. She heard the name of the game and was very surprised. The demon queen was shocked. She did not understand what the young man wanted to do. Lepin looked at his guests and said that they were like two brave heroes. They must unite and defeat the dragon. The young man looked at his uncle and said that they would decide who would be the hero and who would be the dragon using cards. The man quietly whispered to his daughter that the young man was definitely checking them out right now. In turn, the father and daughter saw the young man with different eyes. Lepin told them he would now deal the cards. He also said that they needed to think carefully before making their choice. Lepin smiled and quietly looked at his cards. He quickly glanced at his companions and told them to look at their cards too. The man looked at his daughter and said that they couldn't hesitate now and needed to take the cards. Elif agreed with her father and slowly pulled out a card. In an instant, they all found themselves in another world. The man was scared because he didn't expect that they would end up in another world. The young lady was terrified. She knew things had turned against her, as all her magical power had been drained simply by holding the cards. The young lady looked at her father and in a trembling voice asked him for forgiveness. The man in turn said that everything was fine and she had nothing to worry about. Instead, she should rely on him and he would take care of everything. The young man looked at his card with a grin and asked his guests who wanted to be dragons. He knew that even though he didn't have many strong cards, it was still a good set. He had both club cards and small ones. He knew he should still give it a try. The father and daughter were surprised and frightened when he looked at the master. They timidly said they didn't want to be a dragon. Lepin knew that if he could get another 4 and 2 aces, the victory would be in the bag. The young man looked at his guests and asked if they were sure they didn't want to. Father and daughter looked at each other silently. The young man looked at them and said with a grin that in that case he would not stand on ceremony. Lepin threw several cards on the floor with lightning speed. When he saw the cards that had fallen, he was a little upset. The father and daughter were terrified. They couldn't understand why he was upset and thought it was probably because of their game. Lepin looked at them and said he would go first. About a minute later, he threw down a card and landed on an 8. The young man looked at his uncle and said it was his turn. The man was a little puzzled. He understood that if they passed this test, then Mr. Le Pen would most likely spare them. He understood that they couldn't give in. The man was a little puzzled, as each move would cost him some of their life force. Gritting his teeth, he threw down his card. As he threw it, his life force drained from him. Elif saw that her father had lost some of his life force. Uncle Burrs looked at his daughter and said he was fine. He asked her to leave everything to him, and he would sort it out. Elif, with a trembling voice, timidly said that she was missing. The young man stared at his cards. He realized that, in addition to a pair of jokers, he had a straight from 7 to queen, 3 fours, a pair of 5s, and a 10 and a jack remaining. He didn't know whether to split the pair. He thought that if he did that, they would play a deuce and he would be at a disadvantage. Lapine looked at them and said with a smile that he was also missing his turn. Uncle Burrs was shocked by what he heard. He hadn't expected such a thing from the gentleman. He knew it was his turn now. Uncle Burrs was shocked and very puzzled by the gentleman's answer. He looked at him and in a trembling voice asked if he really wasn't going to go. Le Pen said with a smile that he was not going to go and was skipping. The man understood that Mr. Le Pen was deliberately forcing him to continue playing in order to absorb his life force. Uncle Bears knew that in such a case, he would have to get rid of all his cards as quickly as possible. Uncle Burrs placed his cards on the ground. He looked at the young man and said that, according to the rules, this combination of cards was called a flying dragon. After Uncle Burrs played his cards, he was overcome by excruciating, terrible pain. The price for this was his leg. The more cards he played, the greater the price. But he still knew he had to endure it. After the man called out the card combination, they all saw a fearsome dragon hovering above them. The father and daughter were shocked as the dragon struck the legendary hero. But he in turn felt nothing. The demon queen watched everything that was happening intently. Uncle Burrs realized that playing a combination of cards triggered an attack. He was shocked, realizing he'd just insulted the legendary hero. He knew his end would soon come. The legendary hero, for his part, noticed nothing and stared intently at his cards. The young man looked at his companion and said he had played very well. Uncle Burrs was extremely agitated and wary. He looked at the gentleman with horror. Lapin looked at the man and said with a smile that he was now skipping his turn, and also said to Uncle Brez that he could go. The man was shocked, but he still agreed with the gentleman since he didn't really have a choice. Uncle Burrs made his move and lost his energy again. Elif looked at her cards and, puzzled, said that she was skipping her turn. Lapin glanced at everyone present, then turned his gaze to the cards. He said with a smile that it was his turn and threw down a 10. Father and daughter looked at their cards and declared in unison that they had nothing to beat. Lapin, for his part, was overjoyed, as he had many excellent cards. With lightning speed, he pelted them with his own cards. In the blink of an eye, they were transported to another world, and the atmosphere there was terrifying. The father and daughter were extremely worried and scared as they were hit by a giant wave. Uncle Burrs was very scared, so worried about his daughter. He shouted at her to hold on tight. The father and daughter were very scared, as they understood that this was beyond their strength. After listening to them, the young man said that next comes a 3 in a pair. In the blink of an eye, the father and daughter saw a chariot with knights in the sky. Uncle Burrs was shocked by what was happening, his voice trembling. He said he had nothing to hit with. Elif, in turn, said that she had cards and she could lose weight and make a move. The man was shocked, knowing all the consequences. He was against his daughter making a move, knowing she would have to pay with her life force. The young lady glanced sideways at her father and said she couldn't hide forever, as she also wanted to protect her father. The young lady made her move with a 3 in a pair. A few minutes later, a frantic massacre reigned over them. A few minutes later, an explosion thundered above them. The worried father looked at his daughter with surprise and bewilderment. He asked if she was okay. The young lady, without taking her eyes off the gentleman, said that she was fine. The young man looked at them and said with a smile that they had to protect their comrades, even if it meant breaking their own cards. And the most important thing was determination. He hadn't expected them to master the cards so quickly. The rest of the group looked at their hands. He asked the young man if he had understood correctly that determination was needed. The young man looked closely at his cards and said with a grin that everything was exactly so. But unfortunately, it was too late. The father and daughter were frightened. They looked at their master in surprise. The demon queen, in turn, watched them intently. She was greatly surprised and perplexed as she felt an ominous feeling. The young man smiled and made his move. The young man lost a couple of jokers. A few minutes later, a terrifying monster loomed over them, and the atmosphere was not pleasant. The demon queen looked on in surprise and shock, but she was shocked by everything that was happening and did not understand who he was able to summon. A moment later, the demon queen and everyone present saw that the young man had summoned a supreme demon-level joker. The joker loomed over the father and daughter. But a moment later, he turned his gaze to the demon queen. He looked at her and, with a smirk, asked what she was looking at. Using his magic, he summoned a knife. Joker glanced sideways at the demon queen and told her to be careful, as he might just kill her. The demon queen looked at Joker and asked who he looked down on. She was furious, for she was a queen who had swallowed her pride, fed on magical food, and barely reached the stage of a 3-star demon. And yet the young man had accidentally summoned such a demon. The man looked at his daughter, puzzled, and asked her forgiveness. He said he was no longer exhausted. Elif sighed heavily and told him not to say that, as it was all her fault, and she had angered Lepina. Uncle Burrs was in shock as his life force was being depleted at a breakneck speed. The young man looked at the man with confusion and asked if he was okay. Le Pen realized that his wounds were probably still not healed. The young man was lucky. He realized that his uncle could have won a long time ago, but he simply allowed him to play with Le Pinome. The young man was very naive and thought there was nothing good in this, but in fact, it hindered his recovery. A moment later, Le Pen decided to pause the game. The young man shuffled all the cards, after which the joker disappeared. The young man smiled and said he'd had a lot of fun playing with them and asked his guests to rest now. The father and daughter were shocked. They hadn't expected this. The young man walked towards the door, puzzled, and asked them to forgive him for disturbing him. Uncle Burrs was shocked, staring intently at the young man and telling his daughter that the legendary hero was very difficult to understand. The young lady was puzzled and utterly exhausted. She asked her father if they were still alive. Elizabeth, for her part, was deeply angry with the hero. She understood that playing cards with humans was merely a ploy to strike down the demon queen. The next day, they saw the guests off on their journey. Le Pen looked at them and asked Uncle Burrs if he understood correctly that they didn't want to stay a few more days. He said the fruit he was growing was almost ripe. The man bowed low to them and told them they could no longer disturb them. He said the master had shown them a great favor and they would never forget it. Le Pen looked at them puzzled and told them not to be so serious. Uncle Burrs looked at the queen and the hero and said that they could be sure that after they left here, they would not say anything bad about the queen and the hero. Elif said that Lepine gave them valuable gifts. The young man looked at them, puzzled, and smiled. He said it was just regular barley tea, nothing special. The young man approached his guest and placed something in his hand. He said that this was also a souvenir. A moment later, the man saw cards in his hand. The man was very surprised, as he did not expect such a thing from the legendary hero. Le Pen looked at his guests and said that they could take them. Since Le Pen was a lousy card player and he felt he had no use for them anymore, the demon queen approached them. The demon queen looked intently at the men and quietly told them to leave quickly. The man was terrified, as he hadn't expected this. A moment later, they ran with the speed of lightning. The legendary hero was shocked by his guest's behavior. He didn't even have time to say a proper goodbye before they ran away. Elizabeth decided to go into the house. She said that since everything had returned to normal, he could cook something magnificent for her, like a queen. The young man, puzzled, agreed. The man grabbed his daughter by the hand and ran without looking back, shouting that they needed to run faster. The young lady was in shock and begged her father to stop for just a second because she couldn't run any longer. She felt very sick and uneasy from running at such a fast pace. The father decided to listen to his daughter and settled down for a minute. He stopped, breathing heavily. He was shocked because they first went through trials from the legendary hero and then faced threats from the demon queen. Last night, the demon queen came to them. The demon queen used her power. The father and daughter were shocked, as they did not expect such a thing from the queen. The demon queen glared at the men and, with a malicious glare, told him that she was ordering them to leave this place tomorrow. She also said that they were not to spread the word that the legendary hero and the demon queen were here. Father and daughter meekly agreed to her demands. The demon queen looked at them with a cold gaze and did not say that if they even thought for a second about disobeying the order, the curse mark on their necks would instantly decapitate them. Uncle Burrs told his daughter that the truth was that the demon queen, who ruled the world, and the legendary hero were tired of the world's conflicts and did not want to be disturbed by anyone anymore. Elif looked at her father and said she recognized the place they were in. The man was shocked. He hadn't expected to run so far. Van Kai stared at the guests. He turned them back, so calm that they wouldn't bother the host or that fierce woman again. How it really was. The young lady looked around and noticed that the corpses of the apostles and the dark guilds were still in the same place. The man, puzzled, said that high-level demons were likely living nearby. He believed they needed to get out of there as soon as possible. Van Kai noticed something approaching. He was a little confused, as he didn't know what it was. Von Kai knew, however, that it didn't matter what it was or who it was. He knew it was better than going back and being beaten by that evil woman. A few minutes later, he opened a portal and disappeared. On Ilif and Uncle Burrs. The demons were getting closer and closer to them. The man was shocked because he did not expect to see the great apostle. The young lady was surprised. A great apostle of the Dark Guild, who had the level of the second spirit of the great demon, was approaching them. The apostles of the Dark Guild with different levels of magical power approached them with lightning speed. The young lady approached her father and said that the difference in their strength was too great. She asked him to just let her go with them. She also told him to just run away. The man was furious, but he knew his daughter was right. He said the difference in strength was truly enormous. But after the worlds they'd seen, these apostles were nothing. He remembered his master's words, that the most important thing in a card game is determination. The man glanced sideways at his daughter and said that her father was once known as a brave warrior, a berserker with an iron heart. He struck at the demons with lightning speed. Burrs looked at his daughter and said that ever since her mother returned to the elf tribe, he had taken her and gone into hiding. He said he was wrong. Running away wouldn't solve the problem. He knew they could overcome these difficulties together. He looked at his daughter and said with a smile that they would go together to the elven tribe and bring her mother back. Just like they had done so many years ago, long before she was born. The man was furious and called for cards. The man managed to summon the god of arrows. The young lady was shocked when she saw her mother. The man was very angry as he wanted to play all his cards. With the speed of lightning, the arrow god released her arrow, which struck the enemy. In the blink of an eye, the arrow killed everything and flew towards the main demon. In turn, the demon grabbed the arrow with his bare hands. But a moment later, the arrow struck him too. After the magical power struck all the demons, the arrow god began to disappear. Elif ran to her father with the speed of lightning. She saw that he had lost a lot of his strength. The man smiled and said he thought he should change classes. After thinking for a moment, he said he thought he understood what the gentleman meant by determination. It's the key to unlocking the true power of the cards. At that moment, a new class, the Card Master, appeared on the continent of courage. A week later, Lepin sat in the garden and carefreely ate a watermelon. The young man was surprised, as he had considered the world of magic to be quite remarkable. His method of breeding hybrid fruits had proven successful, but he was still puzzled by the fact that he had no one to share the joy of the harvest with, and he had a feeling that something was missing. The Queen of Demons, wars, and an elf. Initially, he thought he'd be content with simply farming, but after coming into contact with the outside world, he wanted to see more. He knew that people's nature was such that they sometimes changed their minds. He knew he was too weak for that and wanted to forget about it. A moment later, his thoughts disappeared as he heard an explosion. The Demon Queen looked at him and said he looked upset. She asked him what he was thinking about. The young man looked at his companion and, puzzled, said that he wanted to go out into the outside world. But, unfortunately, he was too weak for this. The Demon Queen looked at him and asked if she understood correctly that he had finally decided to leave this place. She said they could travel together. She knew the outside world was nothing compared to his, but unfortunately, she saw that he was acting too arrogantly. The young man, surprised and delighted, asked if what she had offered him was true. He knew it would be a different matter entirely, since he would be under the protection of the Demon Queen. The Demon Queen looked at him and smiled, telling him to stop talking and go get changed quickly. The Demon Queen looked at him and said she should admit that his cooking and sewing skills impressed her. The young man smiled and said it was only natural, since that was what he did best. A moment later, the Demon Queen snapped her fingers and opened a portal. She looked at her companion and said that they should go through it, as it would take them to the nearest town. The young man was surprised and amazed. He stared at the portal and said that it was quite convenient. The young people walked slowly towards the portal. The legendary hero looked at the Demon Queen and told her to wait a bit, as he had a couple of questions for her. The young man looked at her and asked, firstly, if she would leave him alone after they emerged from the portal. Secondly, if she would be able to keep her emotions under control. He also asked if she could behave more restrainedly. The Demon Queen saw the whole picture differently. She saw that he'd told her, firstly, that she couldn't leave without his permission, secondly, that she needed to control herself, and thirdly, that she shouldn't use magic recklessly, otherwise it would ruin all his fun. The young man looked at her and asked if she would return with him after their journey into the outside world. He knew that now that the barrier of the newcomer village had been destroyed, without the protection of the Demon Queen, he would become monster fodder in an instant. The Demon Queen looked intently at the legendary hero and said that of course she would return with him. The outside world meant nothing to her until she crushed it. Lepin was surprised because he didn't expect her to say that. The Demon Queen looked at him with a cold gaze and said that he must fulfill one request of hers. Lepin was surprised and asked in a trembling voice what request she wanted him to fulfill. The Demon Queen looked at him and said that when they returned, she would like him to make a bunch of puddings from different fruits. The young man was surprised and asked if he understood correctly that she wanted pudding. The Demon Queen looked at him and asked if this was a problem for him. The young man looked at her with a smile and said that it was not a problem and he would do everything. In the blink of an eye, they entered the portal, and in doing so, they left Von Kai alone in the newcomer village. In the blink of an eye, they were transported to the outside world. They were transported to the city of Boster, which was neutral territory. The young man was amazed. He'd never seen anything like it. He looked at the Demon Queen and said they'd been transported to an incredible place, and he also said it was like another world. The legendary hero told Elizabeth that he saw an equipment store. He saw a shop selling various ingredients, but was surprised to see an ordinary pig. The young man was very surprised and happy. He rushed from one bench to another. Elizabeth knew that 500 years had passed, but the changes did not seem significant to her. The young man smiled and said that everything was not as bad as Uncle Burrs had said. Elizabeth said it was because she had laid a solid foundation during her reign. The Demon Queen smiled and said that conflicts arose constantly back then and the situation was dire. She used her power to suppress all conflicts and establish a set of rules according to which everyone was equal. She smiled and said with a smirk that the one who really saved the world was she, and not he, the so-called legendary hero. While she was telling the story, she didn't notice how the hero had already managed to run away somewhere. She was shocked because she couldn't believe that he didn't care about her past achievements. The legendary hero saw beautiful toys. He looked at the toys and said they were very well made and the stitching was neat. The legendary hero looked at the young girl who had made them and asked if she had done it. The girl smiled and said that she did it, and if he liked it, she could lower the price a little. A pig-like man approached them and angrily pushed open the box containing the toys. He was furious and asked who had given her the right to open a store there. Pig-like man grabbed the girl by the arm. He said her church owed his gang protection money. He was furious and asked her how she dared open a store on his property. The young girl looked at him and said he never protected her. She asked why she should pay him money. He looked at her and said angrily that since last month, this street had become the property of his gang, and if she wanted to survive here, she had to pay rent every month. The little girl said angrily that the church belonged to the nuns and that when they returned, he would have problems. He was furious and asked her if she understood what she was saying. He said that he would drive them away that very day and take them to the old church. The legendary hero was shocked by everything that was happening. He couldn't stand it any longer and shouted at the man to calm down. The man looked at the legendary hero and asked what he was thinking. Elizabeth glanced sideways at the hero and told him to mind his own business. She asked him if he wanted to play with the humans again. Lupin glanced sideways at the Demon Queen and asked her to help him. Elizabeth turned away from him and said she had no intention of helping him. She said she didn't want to stoop to his level. The young man was shocked, as he hadn't expected such a thing from her. The man looked at the young man and said that he was asking for him. He also angrily asked what he wanted. The young man was very surprised and scared because he understood that he had found himself in a bad situation and no one would help him. The young man decided to quickly get out of the sticky situation. He shouted for all to hear that the pig-headed man was bullying a little girl. He screamed as if he wanted to be arrested. After the young man shouted, silence reigned. The young man was surprised, as he hadn't expected such a reaction from other people. The man, in turn, laughed wildly. He looked at the young man and asked if he really thought someone would help him in this situation. He said everyone here knew his gang. The man said that, judging by the young man's clothes, he came from the South. Smiling, he said that the girl next to him was quite nice. Lupin looked at the man and said they could discuss everything. He said he had some food in his backpack and could share it with them. The man was furious. He looked at the young man and told him to shut up and stop talking nonsense. He told his subordinates to teach the boy a lesson and take the girl to their gang, and he also told them to lock her up. The Demon Queen was furious. She looked at the man with a disdainful smirk and asked if he seriously thought anyone could lock her in here. She said he'd pulled the tiger's whiskers. The man was in shock. He didn't understand why the weather had suddenly changed. The legendary hero, with a trembling voice, told the Demon Queen not to do this, as she could destroy the entire city. The young man looked at his companion and told her to calm down, that they would simply talk it over and quietly scare them. He asked her if she intended to fight the common people at full force. The Demon Queen turned her gaze away from the legendary hero and said that she would only spare them because he asked her to. The young girl was shocked because Elizabeth's magic was simply magnificent and incredible. The man looked at the sky in surprise and said that it was probably going to rain. The man looked at the young people and asked if they wanted to stand up for the orphans. He didn't understand what was happening or why he felt so uneasy. The young man looked at the man and asked how much he wanted for protection. The man said he wanted 10 gold pieces in 2 months. The Demon Queen looked at the man with disdain and said he was making a fuss over a few pennies. She thought he was a complete idiot. Lupin looked at his companion and said she must have a lot of gold coins. She smiled and said she had so many that they couldn't be counted. Lupin looked at her and asked with a smile if she could lend him some. He would sell his vegetables later and pay her back. She looked at him and said he was a complete fool for wanting to use her food to trade for these trinkets. She said that wouldn't do. The Demon Queen looked at her companion and said she hadn't taken them with her when she came to him. The young man was greatly surprised and dumbfounded. The man looked at the young people and asked if they had money. Lupin was puzzled and said that he had no gold coins and also asked if he could pay with farm produce. The man was very angry. He looked at the young man and asked Lupina, did he even think he was playing with him? He said angrily that he had had enough and had no intention of continuing. To the man's surprise, someone threw a wallet full of money at him. He angrily asked who the man was who had thrown money at him. Shaji Terry's looked at the man and told him to stop bullying his friend. He said he'd received the money and could now leave. The man smiled, or rather, a sly smile, and said that Shaji was from the Holy Ball Guild. The man decided not to engage with him and said he would leave. The man looked at the young girl and said that they were leaving now, but next time she would not get off so easily. The legendary hero went to the girl and helped her up. The young girl looked at everyone present and thanked them for their help. Leping looked at Shaji and thanked him. He said he had some fruit. He smiled and asked Shaji to take it. Shaji smiled and said that there was no need for that, as it was a normal thing for him. Shaji glanced sideways at the Demon Queen. He said that if they didn't mind, he'd like them to help him with something. The young girl looked at Shaji in surprise and asked how she could help him. Shaji looked at everyone present and said with a smile that they could talk elsewhere. He said he thought that if everything worked out, it would also solve their financial problems. The Demon Queen calmly said that they were not interested in that and looked at her companion and said that they needed to go. Lepin was a little puzzled. He told her to wait a little. Since the young man had helped them, he would like to listen to him for a little. The little boy looked at his little sister and asked her if she would go with them. Anya looked at them and said that she would go with them because she wanted to help. She looked at her younger brothers and said that they needed to go to church and she would return to them soon. Shaji looked at his companions and said that once they went inside, they should stay close to him. They entered the building and immediately everyone started looking at them. The man looked at the Demon Queen and said that some trash was making a mistake near her. He looked lustfully at Elizabeth and asked if she wanted to join them. The Demon Queen looked at him with a disdainful and angry gaze and asked what he had just said. The men were shocked, not scared, and sipped their drinks in silence. The Demon Queen looked at her companion and said that it was all his fault that he had dragged her to this lousy place and wasted her time. The young man looked at the Demon Queen and said that they had already arrived. Shaji looked at everyone present and said that they could go into the room without being disturbed. Shaji opened the door to the room and said with a smile that he had arrived. In the blink of an eye, he was surrounded by beautiful ladies. They surrounded him with care, warmth, and affection. Shaji looked at his guests and said with a smile that he forgot to tell them that all his wives were in the room. Lepin was shocked by what he heard. Shaji looked at his companions and said that he would like to introduce his wives to them. Shaji, his first wife, and said that Gasha was sitting next to him. She was a warrior with a shield. Assassin Loloke and the magician Geli, and also the last wife, the elf archer Gloria. Lepin looked at everyone present in surprise and said that he had recently met a girl of elven blood. The Demon Queen looked at everyone present with a puzzled expression and said they shouldn't waste time on idle chatter. She asked the man why he'd called them, as they needed to leave soon. Gasha looked at her husband and asked who this woman was, as her behavior was irritating. Elizabeth glared at the woman and smirked, saying that was just the queen's nature. She asked if Gasha had any problems with that. Loloke looked at Elizabeth warily and said it sounded funny, since she was seriously calling herself a queen. She looked at her husband and asked if she was all right in the head. Gloria looked at Elizabeth and told everyone present to look at her ears, as Elizabeth was likely a half-breed with some elven blood. She looked at her and asked if she understood correctly, and also asked what she was doing there. Elizabeth looked at the girl with irritation and said that if she was so eager to get into trouble, then she shouldn't blame this queen later. Lepin saw that the Demon Queen was very angry and knew he had to do something, so he quickly handed her the jar of pudding with lightning speed. The Demon Queen was very happy and pleased that the young man gave her the pudding. The young man looked at her intently and sighed heavily, as he was prepared for this. The young man looked at everyone gathered and said that they actually came from a separate, unnamed tribe. He looked at the Demon Queen and said that she was their tribe's princess, Elizabeth, and that he was her servant. The lovely girls were a little surprised. They said it was no wonder she was acting so strange, since she was a princess from their tribe, and she hadn't seen any other life. They laughed at her because she was a princess from a tribe that worshipped the Demon Queen. The young man said everything was new to her. She was still getting used to the differences in cultures. He thought that explanation should be sufficient. Shaji said they needed to get to the point. He wanted the three of them to go with him to the treasure dungeon. He was certain the terrifying demonic power present outside could be wielded by the princess of a particular tribe. The young man was surprised. He looked at them and asked what kind of treasure dungeon they were talking about. He looked at his companion Anya and asked if she knew anything about the dungeon. Anya said that she heard that such dungeons are magical places created by ancient people to hide valuable things there. Shaji said that was true and that he had made a great effort to obtain information about the dungeon. But 8 people were needed to pass through the barrier. Lepin said that he understood everything and also asked him if he wanted to use them to recruit the required number of people. Anya counted the number of people in the room and asked if she could avoid going into the dungeon. Lepin was a little surprised and asked her what was wrong. He also said that he thought these dungeons were very valuable. He looked at the young girl and said that she must be happy to go there. She looked at him and said he probably didn't know, but the dungeon was very difficult. and she was just an ordinary 4-star mage and could die there. The young man was surprised and said with a puzzled expression that he was not really familiar with the level of magical power. Shaji said they needn't worry, as they simply needed to recruit the necessary number of men, and they would participate in the battle themselves. He said their reward would be no less. He said the young men could receive at least tens of thousands of gold coins. Gasha said that the gentleman single-handedly repelled an attack by several apostles from the Dark Guild who had tried to capture Gloria a few days ago, and his strength is very evident. Anya was overjoyed when she heard the amount of money. She said that with that kind of money, the church would solve all its problems. Lepin looked at the demon queen and asked if they could help. The queen, puzzled, said he didn't need to ask since he'd already made up his mind. She told him not to disturb the queen, who was enjoying a delicious pudding. Gally looked intently at her husband. Lepin saw the crystal ball and was very surprised. Shaji said this crystal ball is for changing Gally's magic. They simply need to place their hand on the ball and it will determine the level of their magical powers. Leping was surprised. He thought this was very surprising. So he looked at Shaji and asked what his number meant. Anya looked at the orb and said it could measure magical power in numbers. She was surprised as the orb displayed a very high number. Anya said this number represented the demon spirit level. Shaji said he was a 4-star demon spirit, and his wives were 4-star and 5-star archmages. He said that since they were going to collaborate, they should get to know each other better. Anya approached the ball and placed her hand on it. She measured her strength. Gally looked at the girl in surprise and said that she had more when she first changed classes. Since 300 is very little. Anya said she was very sorry. She said she couldn't increase her magical power. Lepin smiled and said he also wanted to try measuring his own strength. He knew that even though he hadn't studied magic all these years, his potential strength as a legendary hero shouldn't be low. He was very confident in his abilities. The legendary hero placed his hand on the orb and measured his strength. Unfortunately, the magic orb revealed he had no strength at all. Shaji was surprised. He was surprised that after measuring the power, the magic ball showed the number 0. He said that even masters of the arts don't experience this. Lepin was very surprised. He knew that someone like him, who had been farming all his life, could not have magical powers. The young man sat down on a chair, puzzled, and said that he was doomed to be a muggle in this life. Loloke looked at the young man and asked what he could do. She said she hoped he wasn't completely useless. The legendary hero smiled. He said he was good at farming. He pulled a bunch of bananas from his backpack and said he had recently picked and grown the fruit himself. He said they were welcome to try them. The young ladies were surprised and puzzled. They said he was a typical villager from a remote area and could keep the fruit for himself. Loloke looked at him and asked if it was true that he was an ordinary servant. Shaji looked at Elizabeth and said that she should try too. Lepin looked at the demon queen and quietly said that she just needed to cooperate with them. The demon queen was very angry. She thought he wanted her to accompany them so he could mock the ignorant mortals. The demon queen placed her hand on the orb and a light illuminated it. Everyone present was in shock as the light flowed like a river. Lepin knew that if they found out that Elizabeth was the demon queen, it would definitely cause a huge stir. The legendary hero looked at the demon queen and called out to her. She looked at him and said she understood everything. She knew they rarely went out, so she wanted to play with them. Anya saw the number I had on the ball. She said Elizabeth had a demon spirit level, just like her centaur brother. Gailey was shocked. She said it was impossible. She couldn't believe that this woman had the same demon spirit. Leping breathed a sigh of relief. Shaji said it was simply astounding and, looking at Elizabeth, said she truly was worthy of being the tribe's princess. He said that if they joined them, their chances of obtaining the treasure would increase significantly. Anya looked at everyone present and asked how they could get to the treasure. Li Ping was surprised, as this was his first time stepping into the outside world and immediately encountering something like this. He knew he needed to quickly learn more about everything. Shaji looked at his wife. His wife, in turn, handed him a package. In the blink of an eye, she created a teleportation scroll. A group of people were transported with lightning speed. Lepin was shocked and surprised, as teleportation magic was used right in front of him. He smiled and said it was simply incredible. Anya said, puzzled, that she felt dizzy. She looked at everyone present, a little surprised, as she realized the aura surrounding them. Shaji said they didn't need to waste time and should go to the dungeon. The Demon Queen turned around and said she didn't want to go there. She looked at the legendary hero and said they needed to go home. Gasha was very angry. She looked at Elizabeth and asked what she was doing. She couldn't understand how they could have gotten into the dungeons, and she decided to change her mind at the last minute. Gailey looked at Elizabeth and asked if she understood how much crystals and magical power went into creating a teleportation scroll. Gloria told Elizabeth that if she didn't come with them, she shouldn't even think she could just leave the dungeon on her own. Elizabeth glanced sideways at the young ladies and asked who would install it. The legendary hero approached the Demon Queen and said there was no need for them to quarrel. He asked her to listen to him. Lepin said that such a chance didn't come around often. He looked at her and asked her to let him see it. Anya looked at the Demon Queen and asked if she had noticed. Anya said that inside the cave was a magical force similar to Elizabeth's. The legendary hero was shocked, unable to understand what was being said. He looked at Anya and asked her what she was talking about and what she meant by her words about magic being similar to Elizabeth's power. Shaji walked closer to the Demon Queen and told her to just trust him. He looked at her and said that no matter what danger they faced inside, he would protect them. He smiled and asked Elizabeth to come with him. Elizabeth looked at him with surprise and a frown. The Demon Queen passed by him and went into the cave. The Demon Queen, looking at the legendary hero, said that she would go with him since they rarely go anywhere. The Demon Queen walked casually into the cave. She glanced sideways at everyone present and said that they needed to move faster. All those gathered entered the cave. Anya was surprised, as it was the first time she had seen something like this. Lepin was surprised when he saw the barrier lower again. He looked at the barrier and asked everyone present if they couldn't leave the same way they came. The Demon Queen glanced at him sideways and said that in this special magical space, if you are weaker than the person who set up the barrier, you won't be able to leave by teleportation. So until all the necessary conditions are met, no one will be able to leave. Gloria happily said that as long as the gentleman was with them, they would definitely be able to get that thing. Gasha looked at the girl and told her not to talk nonsense. Anya looked at Gloria and asked what she meant by that. Gloria smiled and said that of course she was talking about gold coins. She smiled at Anya and told her not to worry, as she would get some too. Lepin looked at everyone present and said they were now at a crossroads, asking which way they should go. He knew the Demon Queen was with them anyway, so he knew there shouldn't be any problems. Loloke looked at her husband and asked if they should separate. Shaji looked at her and said no, not yet. He looked at Gelly and told her to use her skill. With lightning speed, the young lady used the magic net. Its power was astonishing as it spread throughout the entire cave. She smiled and said that she would instantly find the shortest path to the treasure. The Demon Queen smirked and said that she was being arrogant. Gailey used her power to assess the state of the cave. It took a lot of her energy to do this. Shaji looked at his wife and asked how things were going in the labyrinth. Gally looked at him, puzzled, and said she thought the labyrinth had no end. She said she'd used all her powers and still couldn't find it. Gasha said that couldn't be true, since Gally's skills only extended 3 kilometers. Gloria said they could use her divination, but the accuracy would only be 34%. Loloke suggested splitting up in this situation. She suggested using the cloning technique for support. Lepin looked at the Demon Queen and whispered to her if she knew how to get through it. Elizabeth smiled and said that of course she knew, since the labyrinth was just an illusion. And those arrogant little people would never find their way out if they kept looking for its end. Lepin whispered to her why she didn't help them. He said it was a way to repay their debt. The Demon Queen smirked and said she'd changed her mind and wanted to see how they would fight alongside him. Anya said that if they went to the 3rd cave, they might find what they were looking for. The Demon Queen looked at the girl in surprise. Lepin, surprised and delighted, asked Anya how she knew. Anya smiled and said she'd just suggested it. Anya said that it was all because special magic was coming from that place. Gailey was furious. She said Anya was talking complete nonsense. She asked how she couldn't sense it. She said some 4-star mage shouldn't be throwing words around so thoughtlessly. Anya looked at her and asked for forgiveness in a trembling voice. Gailey said that although she hadn't been able to find the end of the labyrinth, according to her research, the last cave had the fewest monsters. She looked at her husband and said that they should go this way. Shaji looked at his wives and asked what they thought about it. Loloki said she still thought it was better to separate. Gasha looked at her husband and said she thought it would be better to listen to Geely. She said that even if they chose the wrong path, they could simply turn back. She believed it would be safer that way. Gali looked at her husband and asked him to just trust her. Shaji looked at them and said that in that case, they would just go to the last cave. Anya was shocked. She said that they could go anywhere, but not the last cave. A few minutes later, Anya summoned the enchanted doll. The enchanted doll went to the last cave. Before entering the cave, the doll was attacked by a mimic worm. Lupin was shocked by everything that was happening. He looked at the cave entrance and asked everyone gathered what had just happened. The demon queen looked at the cave entrance and said that it was a parasite, and they were usually found in the bodies of huge monsters. Loloke looked at Gailey and said that she'd said earlier that there were the fewest monsters there. She looked at her and told her not to tell her that she'd only examined the corpse in its stomach. Gailey was very angry. The demon queen looked at her companion and said that they should just leave them here and go on their own. The young man looked at the demon queen with a puzzled expression and said that it would be great if she went first. The demon queen and the legendary hero entered the cave. Anya, a little nervous and frightened, told Elizabeth in a trembling voice that she wasn't sure this was the right path and asked them to wait. Loloke glanced sideways at her husband and asked if she should use the clone to follow them and get information. Shaji thought for a moment and said that wasn't necessary. He knew that when Elizabeth saw the worm, she wouldn't have been able to make such a calm choice. He thought her past wasn't so simple. Shaji told his wives that they should just follow Elizabeth. Before they could enter the cave, they were attacked by monsters. Shaji looked at his wives and asked if they had dealt with all the monsters. Gasha looked at her husband and said that they had dealt with everyone, but the monsters continued to arrive and there was no end to them. The legendary hero hid behind the demon queen and asked her in a trembling voice if it was safe here or not. The demon queen looked at the legendary hero with an evil gaze and said that he was pretending extremely terribly. Gailey looked at Elizabeth and said that it was her fault since the cave she chose was simply teeming with monsters. The demon queen looked at her with disdain and said that the greater the concentration of magic, the more monsters would gather there. She said that as a poppy, the young girl should know this. Gailey was very angry. She said she naturally knew about it. She angrily said that she had a demon spirit and the corresponding abilities, but she was simply standing aside and watching everything happen. The demon queen looked at her and said that before they set out, she herself had said she would deal with the monsters they encountered in the cave. Shaji looked at his wife and asked her to calm down. Gali was furious. She looked at her husband and said that she was very angry right now. Shaji looked at Elizabeth and asked if she was okay, and he said it was an honor to accompany her. Gailey was very angry because Elizabeth not only made her look bad, but also tried to seduce her husband. The young elf looked at her husband and asked why they didn't take a little rest here. Gasha said, puzzled, that they needed rest after such a long battle. Elizabeth looked at them and said that they should not rest, as the queen did not have any extra time. Lolake was very angry. She looked at Elizabeth and asked why she wasn't at the forefront if she was so good. The elf looked at Elizabeth and said she fully supported her friend, because if they hadn't killed all the monsters, then soon Elizabeth wouldn't be as calm as she was now. Shaji looked at Elizabeth and said she should listen to him. He said they should all rest first, and the elven potion would help them regain their strength. Lupin asked what elven potion they were talking about. Elizabeth looked at her companion and asked if he wanted to drink the elven potion. Lupin smiled and said that he had never used it and would like to try it. Lupin looked at the demon queen and said that he didn't know what it tasted like, but maybe it would inspire him to make new dishes. Elizabeth thought he'd eaten too much good food and now wanted to try something ordinary. She looked at him and told him he could try the potion. A moment later, they were all sitting around the fire. Gali looked at Gloria and said the potion had turned out truly excellent. Gasha said she had finally recovered, but she couldn't even imagine how long the treasure hunt would take. Gloria looked at Elizabeth and said it was her special elven item, and it could restore all stats. She looked at Elizabeth and said with a smirk that Elizabeth was so strong that she didn't need any elven potions. Shaji looked at his wife and told her not to be rude. Gloria meekly agreed with her husband. Gloria threw the potions at Elizabeth with lightning speed. Elizabeth caught the elven potion with an unperturbed look. The Demon Queen, in turn, handed the legendary hero some potions. He looked at her and asked with a smile if she would drink it. A moment later, he told her not to complain to him later. The legendary hero opened the bottle with a smile and began to consume the potion. A moment later, he said the herbal flavor of the ingredients was too strong and he couldn't drink the elven potion. He looked at Anya and asked if she wanted some. Anya looked at her new friend and thanked him. She said she'd only used a small amount of magical power, so there was no need. Gloria, for her part, was very angry. She said that giving it to them, who knew nothing about the potion, was a complete waste of ingredients. The Demon Queen looked at her and calmly said that in that case, she would just pour it out. Gloria was very angry. She did not understand how the Demon Queen could just wiggle him. Elizabeth looked at her and asked what she was saying. Leping looked at everyone present and asked them not to quarrel. He said he also had something for them. Lepin said he would find something now, since they should not have been damaged. The legendary hero pulled out some ordinary bananas from his backpack. He smiled and looked at his companion, Lee. Pin handed over a banana, and Shaji said he'd wanted to share it with them earlier and finally had the chance. Shaji thanked him. The ladies also thanked the legendary hero. The legendary hero looked at Anya and said that, unfortunately, they were out of bananas. He asked her if she would like an apple. Anya was shocked. She looked at her new friend and asked in a trembling voice if he was really giving her the apple. Lepin was shocked. He didn't understand what was wrong with it, knowing it was just an apple. He didn't understand why Anya was crying. Anya looked at her friend and asked if she could give him to her brothers and sisters. She said the orphans at the orphanage hadn't eaten fresh fruit in a long time. Lepin understood why she was acting this way. He said that, of course, she could do whatever she wanted. He also said that as soon as they got home, he would pick more fruit for her and distribute it to everyone. Gally threw away the banana with lightning speed and asked who would need such a rotten fruit. Gloria was very angry. She asked how this fruit could possibly be compared to her potion. Shaji looked at the fruit and then turned his gaze to his wives. He said they should snack on this for now, and when they found the treasure, he would treat them to something delicious. Slowly, they began to eat the fruit. After they tasted the banana, they felt strange emotions and sensations. They felt strange emotions and, in the blink of an eye, were transported to another world. Shaji was shocked, unable to understand where they had ended up. They saw strange animals, who in turn offered them a dance. He invited the young people to dance the samba. Gasha gave in to her emotions and began to dance. Loloka also did not lag behind and enjoyed the moment. She was happy and danced and sang. Shaji joined his wives and also spent a joyful time. Lepin looked at his companions in surprise, as he did not understand why they were behaving this way. Shaji danced and sang in the cave. Gloria was in shock. She did not understand what her husband was doing. Shaji looked at his wives with puzzlement. He cleared his throat and apologized, saying he'd been momentarily zonked out. Lepin looked at him and asked if this was some kind of performance. The Demon Queen said she understood his intention completely. Shaji was very surprised as he noticed that his magical power level had increased. Gasha was surprised. She didn't understand what was happening. Loloke was also surprised and didn't understand why her magic level was constantly increasing. Lepin looked at them and said with a smile that their performance around the fire was amazing. Lepin said the culture and customs of another world were truly fascinating. He smiled and said that seeing a centaur dance would be worth it. The Demon Queen understood that the legendary hero knew that the humans would die if they continued, so he raised their levels in advance so that this game could continue. Gloria was surprised. She didn't understand what was happening and how the level of magic could increase so much in a short time. Anya looked at them and said that it was all because they ate Lee's brother's bananas. Pina. The young lady was very angry, asking what nonsense this was and how bananas could possibly have anything to do with it. She got angry and asked if he'd bathed them in holy water. Gasha told Gelly that it was the bananas that had increased their magical power. She was very surprised and didn't understand whether she had truly achieved the level of a 2-star demon spirit. Loloke said that after eating the bananas, they found themselves in another world. She was surprised and asked if they had been enchanted by a demon lord level mage. Shaji said that even he had leaped 3 levels, becoming a 3-star great demon spirit. He was amazed and said it was simply incredible. Shaji looked at Lapina, asked him what the origin of the bananas were that he had just given them. The legendary hero was surprised and did not understand what was being discussed. The centaur looked at his companion and asked what was the matter. Legendary hero said that in nothing. Lapin said he simply asked a question he found difficult to answer, and they were just regular bananas. The centaur was extremely excited. He couldn't understand how these could be ordinary bananas. He said it was simply impossible. The legendary hero smiled and said it was a hybrid crop. Lapin asked them to trust him. He said that even though it was a hybrid, the growing process was entirely organic. In this magical world, he could use such a productive method. Shaylee looked at Gloria and said that since the master said it worked, she would like to eat them too and level up. The young lady took a bite. She was shocked, as the taste was disgusting. Anya looked at them and said it was synchronicity. The demon queen looked at Anya and said she seemed to know quite a lot. Anya smiled and told Elizabeth that she was too kind to her, since she learned all this from books. The centaur looked at them and asked what synchronization meant. Anya said that the monarchy's magic books mentioned that special treasures usually needed to be used under specific conditions for them to be effective. She said she thought her brother's bananas would need to be eaten simultaneously by 3 or more people for that to happen. Gail, furious, told Elizabeth not to pretend to know things she didn't. She asked Anya if she had seen Elizabeth eat him with her own eyes. Anya was confused. She asked for forgiveness and said that she didn't know that either. Anya thought that there was one explanation: unless a person's strength exceeded the strength of the treasure, then it was nothing more than an ordinary thing for such people. Elizabeth looked at Anya and told her not to stare at her so intently. Anya apologized and asked the demon queen for forgiveness. Gloria looked at them and said that it could be because of her potions, the effect of which accumulated and then manifested itself. Shaji looked at his companion and asked if Lei could Pin shared some fruit from her backpack with him. Gloria was furious. She looked at her husband and asked if he really believed this nonsense. The legendary hero smiled and said that, of course, he would be happy to share the fruit. The demon queen calmly threw away the banana peel. A moment later, she took the backpack from her companion and said that she was going to eat some fruit later. The legendary hero was surprised by his companion's behavior. The demon queen looked at them and said that if they had rested, they should get up, as they were almost there. The legendary hero looked at the centaur with bewilderment and apologized. He said he would treat them when the opportunity presented itself. Shaji smiled and said everything was fine. He looked at his companions and said they should go ahead. He, in turn, would catch up with them later with his wives. The legendary hero was surprised. He looked at his companion and asked if they shouldn't go together. The demon queen called to the legendary hero and told him to hurry up and move faster. The hero boys realized he needed to be with the demon queen. Puzzled, he said they would go ahead and meet Shaji later. Loloki looked at her husband and asked in a whisper if they could just take his backpack with supplies. Gasha whispered that they couldn't know for sure, but perhaps the young man was hiding something much more valuable in his backpack. The centaur looked at the departing young people with bewilderment and told his spouses not to worry, as the time had not yet come. He stared at Elizabeth. He knew that ordinary people wouldn't carry something valuable so carelessly, so she was definitely not just a princess from some special tribe. Recently, one of the 4 major powers, the Kingdom of Aristel, offered a huge reward for information about a missing princess. He was certain she was right in front of him. He believed that if he could use this opportunity to turn the princess into his wife, he would gain control of the kingdom, and then he would receive more than just magical fruits. He was desperate to take advantage of this chance to win Elizabeth over completely. Pheromone of charm emanating from their husband. They thought it was entirely their fault for failing to satisfy their master. They entered the depths of the labyrinth. In the labyrinth was the leader of the Shadow Wolves. The legendary hero looked at the Demon Queen and said that it was getting darker and darker. He asked her if this was really the exit from the labyrinth. The Demon Queen looked intently at the legendary hero and said that she had said earlier that the labyrinth was an illusion. She said that they were almost there. The young people walked slowly through the labyrinth. Anya came closer to her brother Lapinu, said something was approaching them. The legendary hero was a little puzzled and asked what was approaching them. A few minutes later, they heard an explosion and a plume of smoke enveloped them. The centaur looked at the young people present and asked for forgiveness for keeping them waiting. He smiled and said that he was a little late and apologized again. The centaur approached the Demon Queen and asked her permission to serve her for the rest of the journey. He looked at her and with a smile on his face said that if she wanted, she could even sit on his back. Elizabeth looked at him with disdain and told him to get lost right away, as he was not good enough to lead her. One of the centaur's wives was furious. She couldn't understand how Elizabeth could behave like that. She looked at her and told her that Elizabeth was an arrogant girl. She couldn't understand how Elizabeth could be so shameless. In an instant, the elf fell as something severed her head. Everyone present was shocked, as they did not expect such a thing. Raising their heads, they saw a stream of unknown monsters pouring towards them. The legendary hero was horrified by what was happening, and with a trembling voice, he asked what it was. The dragon flea was approaching them. The dragon flea pushed off the wall and flew towards the young people. The monster took aim at the Demon Queen. Elizabeth stared at the monster, and in the blink of an eye, it vanished before her. Anya was very scared. She screamed that it was the end for them, and they would all die in the labyrinth. The legendary hero approached the Demon Queen and hugged her. He was shaking with fear. Pin asked in a trembling voice, puzzled, what should they do since their lives were in serious danger? The Demon Queen knew this was a test of human nature. She wanted to let the selfish and arrogant creatures kill each other first. Gasha transformed her ordinary shield into a blade shield. Gailey also used a magic shield. Lapin was shocked. He asked in a trembling voice what they would do now. Since a group of people covered them with a shield and he, Elizabeth, and Anya were left defenseless. The centaur looked at them and said with a smile that he was sure they would find a way to protect themselves. Dog grew up and knew this was the perfect opportunity to discover Elizabeth's true power. He knew that if she didn't do anything, her servant and Anya would be eaten by the monsters. Gasha looked closely at the young men and asked who needed them now. She said that was the end of their collaboration. Gailey smiled a sly smile and said that they would act as bait for a bit now. Gasha was very scared because she realized that their shield was being destroyed. Monsters fell on their heads and attacked them. Shaji struck the monsters with lightning speed. The centaur used a lightning flash. Gasha pounced on the monster with fury, screaming that she would show him everything she was capable of. She struck with her shield. Laloke used the assassin technique. The young girl was utterly exhausted. No matter how many she killed, there was no end to them. She knew that at this rate, they would certainly die. Towards Laloke from above, intending to deliver a fatal blow. But fortunately, the centaur delivered a thunderous blow and repelled the attack. The Demon Queen looked at her companion and said that here they were, finally revealing their true selves. She asked the legendary hero if he still wished to continue this adventure with them. The legendary hero looked at the Demon Queen with a puzzled expression and told her to forget about everything. As they had come here to repay the centaur and, as they had said, it was time to split up. Lapin understood that the outside world was truly unpredictable. He thought that perhaps farming would suit him best. The Demon Queen understood that the legendary hero had first forced them to reveal their true nature, and then considered whether they were worth saving at all. She looked at her companion and told him to prepare to leave. The legendary hero was surprised, as he hadn't expected them to arrive. The Demon Queen took the hero by the hand and said that they needed to go here. Anya looked at everything that was happening with confusion and asked what had just happened. The legendary hero looked at the little girl and told her to follow him. Anya hurriedly ran up to the hero. The Demon Queen saw the portal and knocked on it. A moment later, she whispered some kind of spell. A few minutes later, the portal in front of them began to disappear. The young people saw a door that was striking in its size. Lapin was very surprised. He realized that the entrance was a hidden giant door. A moment later, the door opened in front of them. The Demon Queen went first and called her companions. She told them to go faster. The legendary hero looked at Anya and said that they could go. Their companions, in turn, were engaged in a fierce, brutal struggle for survival. The centaur looked at his companions and told them to climb onto his back and hold on tight. The centaur was furious. He wondered if his companions really thought they could simply abandon them here. A few minutes later, they entered the hall. It was strewn with various treasures. Lapin was shocked. He saw mountains of treasure and was overjoyed. The legendary hero shouted that there were so many gold coins there and that they were now rich. Anya looked at all the treasures and asked if they could really take them. The centaur approached the legendary hero and pushed him away. He told him to step aside and let him pass. Gasha came closer to Anna and nudged her. She told the girl to get out of the way. The centaur gazed intently at all the treasures. He was surprised and delighted that they really existed. The centaur saw the devil's nectar. The legendary heroes said they owed each other nothing now. He said they weren't asking them to be noble, but they shouldn't overdo it. The centaur looked at them with a grin and said that they didn't expect them to help them like that. He said with a smirk on his face that as a thank you, they would let them die quickly. A single coin fell for all present. A moment later, they saw a terrifying dragon standing before them. The hero was shocked, looking at the dragon with bewilderment. A moment later, he called out to the Demon Queen. The legendary hero was agitated and terrified. He looked at the queen and told her to look at the dragon. Anya looked closely at the dragon and said that something even more terrible was hidden here. The Demon Queen looked intently at the young girl. A moment later, the dragon headed towards them and the dragon's angry roar echoed throughout the hall. Gasha looked at the dragon and asked her husband what they should do now. The centaur glared at the dragon and told his wife to buy herself some time, while he gathered his strength to deal with him in one blow. Loloke looked at her master and said that she understood everything and would do everything. A moment later, the golden dragon struck. Gasha looked at Loloke and told her to distract the dragon. Loloke smiled a wicked smile and said that they could rely on her. She used the cloning technique with lightning speed. The centaur knew that this enormous dragon was now his only problem. He knew he had to channel all his magical power into one powerful blow. Loloke used an assassin's technique. She knew it was best for striking a weak spot, but she was still surprised as the dragon didn't even have a scratch on it. Gasha looked at the dragon and said she'd deal with it herself. With lightning speed, she transformed her shield into a flamethrower. Gasha dealt a very powerful blow to the dragon. She was overjoyed, knowing her strike had worked. She said she learned this new technique after becoming a 2-star demon spirit. A moment later, she saw the dragon staring at her. She was shocked, as she hadn't expected this. The dragon struck with ease and speed. Gasha, the defeated woman, fell to the ground from a height. Loloke was shocked by everything that was happening. She screamed the young woman's name with rage. In a rage, she used her power. Loloke used the 1,000 clones technique, which moved towards the dragon with lightning speed, striking it blow after blow. Loloke knew that while she couldn't do much damage to the dragon, she could at least distract him for a while. A moment later, the dragon used the golden hurricane technique. The Demon Queen looked closely at the legendary hero and said that he seemed calm, but that was to be expected. The legendary hero wasn't calm. He was simply in shock from everything that was happening. He knew he almost died. Anya, in turn, summoned the enchanted doll. A large bear appeared before them. The bear began to shield them, saving them from the golden hurricane. Loloke screamed that the master needed to be protected. With lightning speed, she began to repel all attacks, all the while protecting her husband. She was overjoyed and smiled in her victory. The golden dragon stared at the young woman, who was smiling happily, and threw a coin at her. Unfortunately, the young woman couldn't resist as the coin hit her right on the head. A few minutes later, the centaur finally gathered his strength. The centaur knew that even someone with demon sect-level strength wouldn't be able to block this attack. He struck the dragon with fury, but what he saw after he struck astounded him. He couldn't believe what he saw as his sword shattered into tiny pieces. A moment later, the dragon struck the centaur with fury, sending him flying. The golden dragon of the four-star demon sect level stared intently at the remaining young people. Lupin was shocked that the centaur had just died from a blow from a dragon's tail. He knew he would have to use their trump card. Lupin called the demon queen. The demon queen glanced sideways at the hero and asked what he was going to do next. Lupin looked at her and said that now it was her turn to act. The demon queen was puzzled by this statement. Lupin said that otherwise he was afraid that they would die here. The demon queen was angry, telling him not to dare order her around in front of strangers. She wondered if he wanted to use her to threaten him. She knew they wouldn't fall for it. Anya looked at them and said in a trembling voice that the real nightmare was yet to come. She said they might never get out of here. The demon queen walked closer to Anya and said that she was a member of the Jimji clan. The demon queen said she wanted to see the extent of her magical power. The demon queen placed her hand on the young girl's head, and in the blink of an eye, light illuminated them. A few minutes later, Anya remembered her former life in the shelter. She saw fragments of her memory, namely how they were attacked by demons. Elizabeth saw all of the young girl's memories, looked at her, and asked if she understood correctly that Anya had forcibly suppressed her own magic in order to change her memories. Elizabeth removed her hand from Anya's head, and she fell to the ground. Elizabeth said that it was very stupid of the girl to do that. The young girl wept uncontrollably, claiming it was entirely her fault. Because she believed she had killed her brothers and sisters, she wept furiously and begged their forgiveness. The demon queen glanced sideways at the young girl and said she was insulting her clan with such behavior. Elizabeth said that if the girl wanted to escape the prison of regret, she needed to rise up and fight for it. Anya stood up and agreed with the demon queen. She said that at least this time she would protect her new brother, Li Pina. A moment later, the young girl was floating in the air. The legendary hero was surprised and frightened by this change. A moment later, Anya summoned the enchanted doll. All her dolls went into battle, dealing blow after blow to the dragon. The legendary dragon watched the battle intently and asked Elizabeth what she had just done to Anya. The demon queen, her gaze fixed on the battle, told her companion that she had done nothing special, only helped the girl accept reality. Anya watched intently as her summoned dolls fought. She looked at them and shouted at them to grab the dragon. The dragon, in turn, knocked down one of the summoned dolls with lightning speed. The dragon and the summoned dolls engaged in a fierce struggle, but the dolls didn't give up and attacked the golden dragon. The golden dragon, in turn, used the golden hurricane technique. The legendary hero watched the fight intently. He looked at her with surprise and said that Anya was truly an amazing girl. Lupin looked at Elizabeth and asked her what kind of Jimji clan Anya belonged to. A few minutes later, they saw a flash of lightning. The centaur stood up and asked with a grin how they had been getting on without him. The demon queen was surprised, as she thought he had died long ago. Pin looked at the centaur in surprise and told him to give him back his backpack. The centaur smiled with a grin and said that the backpack was now his trump card, and the fruits that were in the backpack were also his. Lupin was shocked. He didn't understand what the centaur was trying to do. He knew it wouldn't work. The legendary hero looked at the centaur and asked if he really wanted to eat them all. The centaur didn't settle down and continued eating fruit. A few minutes later, he transformed into an incomprehensible monster. The centaur was overjoyed, his strength overflowing. He was shocked, as he had never felt so powerful before. The centaur looked at the young people and said that with such strength, he was no longer afraid of the members of the Holy Sword Guild. The golden dragon looked at the centaur in surprise and stared. Only after a few seconds did the golden dragon use his golden dragon breath. But this only irritated the centaur. He furiously attacked the dragon and told him to stop bothering him. Timpani unleashed a thunderclap. The dragon fell to the ground with a crash. The centaur, in turn, approached the relic he wanted to take. He looked at the cup and said that if he drank this, he couldn't even imagine how strong he would become. A moment later, he poured the contents of the cup into his mouth. The centaur took on a demonic form within minutes. He looked at the young people and said that he now realized the full value of the devil's nectar. The protagonist looked at Elizabeth intently and said that this guy is getting weirder and weirder. Lupin looked at the demon queen and asked her if there was something to be done about this soon. Anya looked at the centaur and told her friends not to worry, as she would not let him get close to them. The young girl tried to summon the magical toys, but the centaur in turn pierced her through. The centaur looked at the young girl and said with a grin that he would get rid of her first. Lepin was shocked because he didn't expect this. With lightning speed, the centaur threw the young girl to the floor and, walking towards the legendary hero, said that it was his turn now. Lepin rushed with lightning speed to the little girl who was lying on the floor covered in blood. The legendary hero wept over the girl's body. He shouted at her to hold on with all her might, and he also told her that Elizabeth would surely help her, and everything would be all right. He approached Elizabeth and told her he knew she was hiding her power. He said it didn't matter now, since she only had two options. The centaur approached her and said she could be his wife. He told her to take him into her kingdom and help him inherit everything. The centaur smiled and said that otherwise he would play with her until she became useless, and then he would turn her into bargaining chips so he could get whatever he wanted. Lepin looked at them with tears in his eyes and said that the centaur was not himself, and he also swore at him. Pin was furious and shouted at the demon queen to kill the centaur. The centaur, in turn, looked angrily at the young man and asked if he had addressed him. He called him low, kicked with trash. A moment later, he struck with fury. A few minutes later, a column of smoke enveloped the legendary hero. He looked intently at the centaur and declared that he was done pretending. The golden dragon smoothly appeared in front of everyone present. The centaur was shocked, unable to comprehend who he had killed. Now he saw the dragon's true form. The demon queen only laughed, realizing the golden dragon was using its tail as bait. She knew Elizabeth had played this little trick on the dragon before. At the moment, they were in the realm of emptiness. The centaur was shocked. He said in a trembling voice that it was simply impossible, since he was at the level of a demon king and he could not lose so easily. The golden dragon easily crushed the centaur. Lepin looked at everything that was happening, surprised and stunned. He asked the demon queen if this was all true or if he was just imagining it. The demon queen looked at her companion and said that she had long been sure that he had understood everything long ago. Elizabeth said that this place simply doesn't exist. The legendary hero was shocked and terrified as they were flying in zero gravity. The demon queen said that even if magic was his weakness, he couldn't help but feel such power. The golden dragon came closer to the demon queen and said something to her. The demon queen in turn answered him. A moment later, the golden dragon stared at her, his eyes full of tears. A few minutes later, the golden dragon transformed into a young girl. She looked at her mistress and asked if it was really her. Amelia said she'd been waiting a long time for Elizabeth to return. Elizabeth looked at Amelia and said she'd already reached the level of a demon king, yet she was still so naive. Elizabeth said she hadn't wanted to come here and wake her up at first, as she was too clingy. Amelia was very upset. She said her mistress had been gone for such a long time, and she missed her very much. She was born between heaven and earth, and the lady found her in a hidden kingdom and helped her hatch with her magic, after which they entered into a magical contract. The lady not only gave her a name, but also personally trained her and played with her. She swore that she would protect and serve Elizabeth. As she grew older, she began transporting Elizabeth everywhere to deal with nasty injuries. Later, Elizabeth, in order to end the endless wars, decided to become the ruler of this world. Amelia was overjoyed to see Elizabeth gradually achieve peaceful rule. But from then on, Elizabeth began to smile less. The demon queen grew stronger every day, but the golden dragon was very weak and could not fully help his mistress. When Amelia unexpectedly went out to patrol the territory, her mistress wanted to draw the holy sword to find the legendary hero, but there has been no news from her since. Time passed, but there was still no news from the demon queen. Aristotle, the minister of the human race, said that 10 years had already passed. Her Majesty's reputation instills fear in the people and can hardly ensure stability. But in fact, strange changes are being observed, and the crime rate continues to rise. Magal, the minister of the orc race, said that several great orc leaders had already declared their separation from the Oni tribe, and that they could not be suppressed without the help of Her Majesty. Heimerdinger, the dwarven minister, said they could not remain idle. As the more the hidden threat grew, the more damage it would cause when it broke out. He suggested that everyone return to their territory and take control of the situation while awaiting Her Majesty's return. Twyla, the elven minister, said that Jimji was the one who had been closest to Her Majesty. She asked if he truly believed that Her Majesty was having any problems with the legendary hero. Jimji, the demon race minister, said it was simply impossible. He said he had witnessed Her Majesty's terrifying power firsthand. He said there was no one in the world who could match her strength. He said all the ministers could do whatever they wanted, but he would still find the queen himself. The demon queen's servant looked at everyone present and said that they needed to return to their domains, and he would personally find the demon queen. Eventually, the ministers returned to their territories. Amelia wasn't interested in any of this, so she simply took the unfinished glass of wine and returned to where her mistress had found her, believing that her mistress would one day return to this place. Amelia said she was eagerly awaiting her mistress's return. She waited for her until she fell asleep. Amelia looked at the demon queen and said that she had finally returned. Amelia burst into tears in front of the demon queen. Elizabeth stared at her favor and asked if it wasn't wonderful. Elizabeth said it seemed the long wait had forced her to shed all playfulness and master meditation, which is a key step to achieving the level of a demon king. Amelia looked at her mistress and begged Elizabeth not to leave her. She was shocked, realizing the demon queen had only gone away for so long so she could master meditation and reach the level of a demon king. Lupin was very surprised and puzzled, but he looked at the demon queen and told her to stop remembering the past, since they needed to save Anya as soon as possible. Anya woke up and looked at her little brother, Lapina. With a trembling voice, she asked where they were now. The legendary heroes were overjoyed. He looked at the young girl and asked how she was feeling. Anya looked at him and said that everything was okay with her. A moment later, she said she was fine, but unfortunately, the apple he gave her was crushed. The young man smiled, stroking her head. He said that there was nothing to worry about and she didn't need to worry about it. The demon queen looked closely at the legendary hero. She knew he had everything under control, even when they were distributing the bananas. She knew he had foreseen this outcome. Amelia, in turn, hugged her dear mistress tightly. Amelia was very angry. She did not understand why her dear mistress continued to look at the man, but only glanced at her once. She glared at the men and asked who he was. The demon queen calmly replied that she was a legendary hero and had been living with him all this time. Amelia was deeply angry with the legendary hero, as he had stolen her mistress away for so long, and now she realized he wanted to steal her heart. She desperately wanted to get rid of him as quickly as possible. Lupin looked at Amelia and smiled. He introduced himself and said it was a pleasure to meet her. Amelia knew that now that she had reached the level of the Demon King, she could easily match the Demon Queen's strength. She knew that if they combined their powers, they would surely kill him. Amelia transformed and furiously attacked the legendary hero. But a moment later, an explosion thundered. Amelia was in shock, unable to comprehend what had just happened. The legendary hero looked at her and apologized. He said he hadn't reacted in time. Amelia was confused, as she knew that such an attack could have destroyed an entire city, but he simply reflected it. The legendary hero approached her and announced that it was his turn. Amelia was terrified. She knew the legendary hero was no less terrifying than her mistress. She was confused, wondering if he could truly suppress her, who had reached the level of a demon king. Lupin walked closer to her and said he was truly sorry he hadn't had the chance to shake her hand. He looked at the demon queen and said he wasn't surprised she was so calm now, since it turned out the dragon girl was her friend. Amelia was shocked that the legendary hero was simply shaking her hand. Elizabeth looked closely at the young men. The demon queen said that, to be precise, Amelia was her mount. The young man was surprised, as he hadn't expected this. For a moment, maps appeared in his head. A moment later, the demon queen snapped her fingers, and they found themselves in the village. She looked at everyone present and declared that she had had enough for today. Amelia smiled and told her mistress that she was simply incredible. She was shocked, as she had only been able to create that place after attaining the level of a demon king, and her mistress had absorbed it in an instant without any effort. Amelia knew that her mistress was truly worthy of being called queen. The legendary hero smiled and said that returning must have been very simple. He knew that as long as Elizabeth was by his side, all his problems would be irrelevant. A moment later, Anya coughed and said that it was too much. Lepin was shocked by everything that was happening, screaming frantically at Anya. She said in a trembling voice that she was losing consciousness from the teleportation. Elizabeth looked at the young man and told him to take the girl into the house so she could rest. She, in turn, would talk to Amelia. Lepin didn't linger and ran towards the house with lightning speed. Amelia looked at her mistress and asked what she wanted to tell her. Amelia looked at her mistress and said that she had ordered her to do so, as she was looking forward to being able to serve her. The Demon Queen looked closely at her favor and asked if she had heard anything about the Dark Guild Demon Realm. Amelia thought for a moment. She said that although she had not been in the outside world for 500 years, she still received some news from the demonic realm before she fell into hibernation. Amelia said she remembered. She said the Dark Guild was founded by Malfoy, a human prince. The Demon Queen began to remember, puzzled. Elizabeth said she thought there had been such a person before. I looked at my mistress and asked what was wrong. She also asked if she wanted to ask the man to do something. Elizabeth said she'd heard earlier that this dark guild had committed a massive number of murders under the pretext of resurrecting the Demon Queen, and this had left her displeased. Amelia was extremely angry. She couldn't understand how they were going to resurrect her if her mistress was alive and well. Amelia said it was disrespectful to her. She also asked her mistress if she wanted Amelia to do something about it. The Demon Queen glared at her subordinate and said that she must make them disappear from this world completely. But she must not reveal any information about the Demon Queen or this place. The demon on the left smiled and said that Amelia was very obedient. Elizabeth said that when Amelia finished all her work, she would free her, and then Amelia would be able to do whatever she wanted. Amelia looked at her mistress and told her to rely on her completely. Amelia smiled and said that she was going to destroy the Dark Guild. Amelia was overjoyed because the mistress had said she would be set free and allowed to do whatever she wanted. She hoped that after that, she would be able to climb into bed with the mistress every night, just like in childhood. With the speed of lightning, Amelia flew. But a moment later, a loud explosion was heard in the sky. Amelia was extremely angry and shocked. She didn't understand what had happened or who dared attack her. She was surprised, as to pierce her skin, he would have to be at least a demon lord. She understood that whoever had attacked her was extremely dangerous. She wanted to get rid of this potential threat to her mistress. Kai looked at Amelia, a little surprised, since his target was still alive. The mechanical dog has increased its defense level to the second. Amelia used the wings of the Dragon Queen. She was surprised that he chose her as his opponent. She said with a smirk that he had picked the wrong one. A moment later, she saw a lot of weapons flying towards her. Rockets were flying at Amelia from all directions. A moment later, a loud explosion was heard in the sky. Amelia was in shock, and there was no living place left on her. Kai looked at his target and saw that she was still alive. He said they needed to level up to level 3. Elizabeth approached Kai. She glared at the dog and said that this girl was her subordinate and could not be touched. Kai, his voice shaking, said he understood and would add this person to his whitelist. Amelia was shocked because she realized that this was just a terrible place. Lepin made orange juice for Anya. He came closer to me and said that if she was feeling dizzy, she should drink orange juice. Lepin said the juice would help clear her head. Anya smiled and thanked him in a trembling voice. The young girl was still trembling, but she still accepted the juice and drank it. In an instant, she sensed that every piece of fruit pulp contained magical power. When it burst, it released a stream of magical energy, activating every nerve cell in her body and relieving fatigue. Anya was shocked, as she had never felt such feelings before. She looked at the young man and asked if this was high-level divine magic. Anya was in shock. She felt her mind begin to clear. Anya saw before her an entity that told her to stop suppressing her true nature. Anya was in shock. Her face was flooded with tears, and she couldn't calm down. Lepin lay down tiredly on the couch and said he really enjoyed lounging around at home. He looked puzzled and said that going for walks was clearly not his thing. The Demon Queen came into their room and looked at Anya. She said that it seemed Anya had already remembered everything about herself. The Demon Queen looked at the girl closely and said that her ancestors had once made an oath to her that the Jimji clan would always be loyal to her. The Demon Queen looked at Anya intently and said that if her blood had fully awakened, then the power of the oath should have awakened as well. Anya looked at the Demon Queen with fear and asked in a trembling voice, asked Elizabeth if she was really the legendary Demon Queen. Elizabeth smiled, and I said that she was the ruler of this world. Anya was very surprised. She said that according to historical records, she died with the legendary hero. Anya looked at Leipina, asked who he was then. The young man looked at the young girl and said that he was embarrassed to say this, but it seemed that he was the legendary hero. Anya looked at them, puzzled, and said that the story should be exactly like this. Anya said that brother Lepin and sister Elizabeth fought tooth and nail, but after a month, they developed feelings for each other. And in the end, they gave up the fight for the title of the strongest and suddenly fell in love with each other. And since then, they lived in solitude for 500 years. Elizabeth looked at Anya and said with a smile that you could say that. Lepin was very surprised and told Anya not to talk nonsense as she was mistaken. Anya looked at them and said she understood everything. The Demon Queen looked at the girl and said that, despite being the descendant of a demonic line of powerful warriors, she had fallen to this state. The Demon Queen said that Anya was a disgrace to the Demon clan. Lepin was very surprised by the Queen's statement. He asked if Anya really belonged to the Demon clan. Elizabeth, looking at Anya, said that it must have been about 600 years ago. The child named Jimji awakened, his eyes glowing red. When he used his magical powers, his fighting skills greatly improved. However, as his power grew at an exponential rate, he became incredibly cruel. Only constant killing could satisfy him. In just a few years, he plunged his northern territories into chaos. More than 100 elite warriors under Elizabeth's command were killed by him. And this only increased his ambitions. So he came to Elizabeth's castle and tried to challenge her. Naturally, the Demon Queen quickly defeated him and sealed away his cruel side. From then on, he swore his mouth would remain faithful to the Demon Queen. Anya, her voice trembling, said she knew nothing about it. She said she remembered living in the church orphanage, and she remembered the nuns, the brothers and sisters. That was her whole family. The Demon Queen looked at the young girl and said that she killed everyone in the orphanage when she went mad and couldn't come to terms with reality. And so she made up in her mind that she was waiting for the nuns to return. The legendary hero looked at the Demon Queen and asked if they hadn't met her siblings at the market. The Demon Queen looked at the girl with confusion and told the legendary hero to forget about them. The Demon Queen opened a portal with lightning speed. She said they could simply expose the lie and see who she, her sisters and brothers, really were. When the Demon Queen opened the portal, they saw the toys. Anya looked at her brothers and sisters in surprise. Her brothers and sister looked at her in surprise because they wanted to play with her. They told her that everything was fine with them. They smiled and told her to come back to them quickly. The Demon Queen looked at the young girl and asked if she understood. Elizabeth explained that she was using her magical power to support the dolls and therefore could not rise above the level of a mage. Lepin was very surprised, but after what he saw, he understood what was going on. The Demon Queen looked at Anya and said she had awakened her power to protect her loved ones from the dark apostles. But then she went mad and killed all her family. Elizabeth said this was the reality she had so carefully avoided. Anya was in shock. She said in a trembling voice that this simply couldn't be. Anya was in shock. Her head was splitting. She screamed. The Demon Queen hit the girl and she lost consciousness. The Demon Queen looked at her friend and said she knew he wanted to help her, but she only lost consciousness temporarily. She said she wanted to remind the legendary hero that if Anya couldn't control herself and lost her mind again, the entire city would be destroyed. The strike hero looked intently at the Demon Queen and spoke. He asked her permission to rectify the situation. Anya slept quietly in the room, while Lepin sat next to her and worked. The young girl woke up and asked if he had brought her back. Anya said she seemed to have caused him a lot of trouble. The legendary hero said that was not so, and he had done it with Elizabeth's portal. He glanced sideways at the girl and asked if she was feeling better. Anya said in a trembling voice that she remembered everything. And there was no nun, and it was she who killed them all. The young man smiled and said that it was all a lie and she was just trying to protect her brothers and sister and she was not a murderer at all. Anya, in turn, said that it was all her fault, since it was her fault that she ran away after she lost control. Lepin said it was the Dark Guild's fault. He said he was sure Anya hadn't meant to lose control. He said she didn't need to blame herself. Anya, in turn, burst into tears. She said that it was she who killed them and that there was no way to change that. The legendary hero smiled and said that details matter, just like in doll making. He said she was doing a wonderful job, but afraid of the stuffing leaking out, she tied too many knots. And as a result, the doll loses its soul. Lepin asked her permission to help untangle the knots and remake it. Anya was furious. She didn't understand what he was doing, did with her brothers and sister. Lepin said Shakespeare once wrote, "Don't be confused. The island is full of sounds and rustlings and whispers and cracklings. They are pleasant and no harm comes from them. Sometimes it feels like hundreds of instruments are ringing in your ears." Anya was in shock because she didn't understand where she ended up. And I dream of golden clouds. And a rain of treasures pours down, and I cry because I woke up. Anya saw a golden glow in the midst of the storm. Lepin looked at Anya and told her to immediately look at the clear sky and make up her mind. The legendary hero extended his warm hand to her, overjoyed that she had decided to follow him. The young girl was in shock. She didn't understand where she had just been. The legendary hero looked at his companion. He said he'd remade the doll for her, and the doll's name was Raphael. The angel doll, Raphael, glowed and charged with warmth. Lepin looked at Anya and said with a smile that he hoped the doll would help her heal. He tenderly handed the doll into her hands. The young girl felt a strange feeling, but a moment later she understood what this feeling was, since she could not be mistaken. Anya saw her brothers and sister surrounded by the legendary hero. Anya said goodbye to them with tears in her eyes, but also with a smile on her face. Anya cried uncontrollably and told her family that she would defend the church. Lepin looked at her and said with a smile that the sky always clears up after the rain. The legendary hero sighed heavily, glad that he'd fortunately learned about psychotherapy from the books he'd previously received from the system. He knew he'd have to reread them in the future, just in case. Amelia descended into the demon realm, into the swamp of death. She was shocked and knew it was unacceptable to turn her mistress's land into such a mess. She looked around carefully and decided to go down. Amelia was surrounded by a crowd of monsters. They wanted to eat her. She was shocked because she realized that the guy treated the lady's land like a garbage dump. In the blink of an eye, the monsters parted before her. But a strange creature looked at her and asked who she was. He said she dared to come to a dark guild to sow discord single-handedly. It was one of the 6 pillars of the dark guild Kurtuzar. He looked at her with disdain and told her to come closer to him. Amelia looked at him with disdain. Looking around, she saw an unpleasant sight. A meeting was taking place in the dark guild hall. The man looked at everyone present and said that someone powerful had come. One of the 6 pillars of the Dark Guild, Farazdag Samawi, said the Ghana forces were completely annihilated during the invasion of the Holy Sword Guild. He said they most likely came for revenge. One of the 6 pillars of the Dark Guild, Rugbader, said that this was not a problem and Kurtuzad will meet them. Experiment number 24 asked William if he wanted to have some fun. William told Elizabeth to keep quiet. Dago Cthulhu said that whoever it was, even if he was the master of the sword himself, if he dared to come here, he would never return. Vis Malfoy said he was worried about the missing materials. Vis Malfoy smiled sarcastically and said that the materials came to him on their own. The man was furious, unable to understand how this was possible. He said his abyssal magic had been ineffective, and even his magical tools hadn't worked. Amelia used the claws of the Dragon Queen. All the monsters were shocked because they didn't expect that a young girl could hit Kerr. Tuzada. The great apostle said they had had a tough battle. He thought the girl was definitely seriously injured and they should take advantage of the opportunity. Amelia looked at everyone present in confusion as she saw one big pile of garbage. Amelia used the Golden Dragon Queen's roar. All the monsters drooped as they could not withstand the roar. In the blink of an eye, Amelia destroyed all the monsters that surrounded her. Amelia was even a little upset as she dealt with them in the blink of an eye. The monster looked at her and said that if she wanted to enter, she had to answer his questions. The price for the wrong answers would be her life. Amelia didn't wait for the monster to ask her questions about us. She attacked him with fury. Amelia walked inside and looked at everyone with disdain. She calmly told Vis that she had found him. For several minutes, they paid no attention to her. Amelia looked at him intently and said that he had become very ugly. Vis, in turn, laughed and said that he was already too old to be true. Vis looked at her and said with a smile that they hadn't seen each other for a long time. The members of the Dark Guild were shocked by everything that was happening. The man was shocked as he saw that her attack had worked. Amelia looked at them and said that she wanted to finish for today. Wiss's body began to crumble, but he also said with a grin that, as it turned out, Amelia had become much stronger. He looked at her and asked why she had suddenly awakened from a deep sleep. He asked her if she had really found Mistress Elizabeth. Amelia, you in turn looked at him with contempt and did not answer. But he decided not to give up and use the forbidden tentacles. They enveloped Amelia. He said that once he was rid of her, the pet of Queen Elizabeth's demons and the Queen of the Golden Dragons, the position of Demon Lord would be his. He said that her magical power was now trapped in a sea of darkness. And no matter how strong she was, she couldn't withstand his grip. Amelia looked at him with disdain and asked what he meant by, "Get out." Amelia bit him with all her anger. He looked at her with contemptuous glances and said that her resistance was useless. But Amelia decided not to give up. She bit and consumed the demon's flesh. He looked at her and said she was crazy. He asked if she was really planning to devour him since his body was so enormous. He said she was overestimating herself. Amelia was absorbing him, and he in turn was screaming in the chapter for him to save him. She consumed his body completely. A moment later, she said she hadn't eaten since waking up. The woman approached Amelia and said she surrendered. She said she had been forced to join them against her will. The woman moved closer to Amelia. She used a seductive kissing technique. She walked closer to Emily and told her that if the attack didn't work, then this definitely should work. She looked at Amelia and said with a sly smile that from now on she was in her power. Amelia, she's not angry, struck the woman and sent her flying. She looked at everyone present and said she could digest an octopus in one sitting. The man looked at her and said that she had not only killed the deputy head, but also wounded her father. He said it was interesting. He attacked her with fury and released his power as a demon king. Amelia looked at him with disdain and shouted at him to move aside, then struck him. She threw him away in fury. The other members of the guild did not want to stand aside and began to attack her with fury. Amelia looked at Visa, asked if he thought he could take Mistress Elizabeth's place. She was shocked that he'd brought such trash with him. Amelia looked at him and said he wasn't strong enough to even be her opponent right now. Wiss looked at her and said she was now at the level of a demon queen. He congratulated her on reaching that level. He looked at her and said that he was very jealous of her, since he, as a person, did not have a long enough life to reach such a level. Emily looked at him and told him to stop talking such nonsense. She looked at him and asked if he was planning to end his life or if he thought he could defeat her. He looked at her and laughed, saying that he would never go against her. He also asked how he dared to become her opponent. He looked at Amelia and said that if the Demon Queen joined them, it would change everything. Amelia looked at him with disdain and said that he was a complete bastard. A month later, life went on as usual for the legendary hero. The legendary hero slowly planted all his plants. He looked after them and reaped the fruits of his labor. He left the field with the spoils, and his friend followed him faithfully. The legendary hero chops wood with his sword every day, and the Demon Queen, in turn, ate all the dishes with lightning speed. The legendary hero was sad and said nothing. The Demon Queen stared at him. She couldn't understand what was happening to him or why he was acting like this. He was tormented and couldn't sleep at night. One night, he woke up and said he had decided everything. The hero looked at the Demon Queen and apologized for disturbing her so early in the morning. He made her breakfast and told her to enjoy it. The Demon Queen looked at him and said that if he had anything to say, he should say it now, as she didn't like it when people beat around the bush. He looked at her and said that in fact, after a year of dealing with him, she should already know that he posed no threat to her and that the hero and the demon queen could coexist together. He looked at her and said in all seriousness that she needed to get out of here and take control of the world again. The demon queen looked at him and asked why she was doing this. He said he'd originally thought he could live peacefully here in the newcomer village, but he still didn't expect the system's words that the meeting between the hero and the demon queen was inevitable to be true. And yet, she came to him. He said that, as a result, the village's barrier was damaged, and 500 years had passed outside. This led to numerous disturbances. Lepin said that without her as the ruler of this world, some dark guild had emerged, and what happened to Uncle Burrs and Anya was just a tiny part of the chaos of the outside world. The demon queen looked at him and asked why he cared so much, since it didn't affect them in any way. Pin looked at her and said that he had indeed been very confused back then because the barrier had disappeared. Without her, it had been very difficult for him to survive in the village. He said that if he hadn't known what was happening outside, he would undoubtedly have continued his life without any problems. But after learning about it, he couldn't stand by. He said he simply couldn't stand by, simply because he didn't want to be a hero. He didn't want people to suffer. The demon queen was puzzled. She realized that he said that he did not want and could not live without her. Lepin looked at her and asked her to go and become the ruler of this world again. He said that although he was an incompetent hero, he couldn't continue being selfish. He knew that if his home was destroyed by monsters, the best he could do would be to go and get a job in the city. Elizabeth looked at him and asked if she understood correctly that he wanted her to solve the problems in the outside world herself. She said it was just a trifle, nothing more. He was surprised, and at the same time, he was very happy. Lepine looked at the demon queen and asked if she agreed. He said he could help her get her things. Elizabeth knew he was just looking for an excuse to throw her out. She knew he wouldn't succeed. She looked at him and said she wasn't interested in the outside world, and there were two ways to solve the problem. He looked at her and asked what methods there were. The demon queen looked at him and said with a smile that the first option was the easiest. She would cast a world-destroying spell to completely eradicate this problem. She looked at him and asked what he would say. Lepin was shocked. He looked at her with horror and said that this option wouldn't work. The demon queen looked at him and said that there was a second way to find the right person to rule the world. She said he could teach him from the shadows. The legendary hero was surprised. He didn't know who the right person would be. He looked at her and asked who it could be. The demon queen looked at him and said that he already knew that besides her, only he was suitable for this. The young man was surprised. He looked at her and asked if she really wanted him to rule the world. The legendary hero was tall and did not understand how everything turned out this way. The demon queen, in turn, shouted at him to concentrate and begin his sword training. The legendary hero was afraid of her and said that he would do everything now. The demon queen laughed at him, knowing he wanted to play with her in turn, but she knew he was too young for that. Still, she couldn't deny the fact that he was slightly stronger than her. But the demon queen also learned that when it came to psychology or strategy, he was no match for her. When he told her to leave that morning, she felt so miserable she almost did. But then, when he told her from the bottom of his heart that he couldn't live without her, she saw through him completely. She knew perfectly well that he knew that with their power, they could destroy the world and rule it with their minds. Elizabeth knew the best they could do was leave him and watch the changes in their free time. Elizabeth knew that Amelia had taken care of the Dark Guild, so there was no need to worry about that anymore. The Demon Queen was a little confused. Every day he wandered off into his thoughts, and today he woke her up this morning to talk nonsense so she would go off and rule the world. She knew he was just trying to find an excuse to get her to pay attention to him. She knew, the obvious fact, that after a year of dealing with the Demon Queen, Le Pen fell in love with her. The legendary hero was training. He didn't know if swinging a sword 1,000 times a day could improve his skills. He thought it sounded too simple. To be the strongest and to enjoy being defeated by someone else. She knew she was the only one in the world capable of controlling him. She knew he was a hero with corrupted interests. Elizabeth knew that even if she wasn't interested in love, if it was him, then that was a different matter. She knew he had a supreme ability to create and produce. She, for her part, was excellent with a ball and magic. She wondered what kind of child they could create. But Elizabeth knew she wouldn't agree to this so easily. So first, she wanted to let him improve his swordsmanship so he could become stronger and create a strong child. The young man stared at the Demon Queen. He wondered what she was thinking. He wondered if she really intended to teach him swordsmanship and magic so he could destroy the Dark Guild. A few minutes later, the sword exploded in the hands of the legendary hero. The boy fell to the ground. Lupin was confused, as he had a sword in his hands just a moment ago. The legendary hero stood tall and screamed. He couldn't understand how the holy sword had turned into a child. The young man looked at the hero and asked who he was calling a child. He said he was the great spirit of the holy sword, and his name was Alpha. The Demon Queen looked closely at the young people and asked what was going on. Alpha glared at the Demon Queen. He knew immediately it was her. With the speed of lightning, he struck her. The holy sword wanted her to die, but with the speed of lightning, Elizabeth parried his blow. The Demon Queen kicked him and sent him flying into the sky. Alpha fell to the ground with lightning speed. The Demon Queen, in turn, looked at the spot where he had fallen and told him to sit down so they could talk quietly. A few minutes later, they were all sitting together at the table. The boy looked at Alpha and said that he was asking for forgiveness, as he did not know that he had consciousness after so many years of use. Alpha smiled, finally admitting that there was something he couldn't possibly know about. But at a critical moment, when the hero was fighting the Demon Queen, he came to the rescue. Alpha couldn't stand it any longer and rushed towards Lupinu. He didn't understand how the hero could use it like that. He was furious and couldn't understand how the hero could use the holy sword to chop wood. He looked at the hero and asked if he knew how he felt. The legendary heroes tried to calm him down. Alpha was furious. He said the heroes had actually changed the plot and befriended the queen. And he'd even turned him into a wood chopping tool. He said that Lupin doesn't deserve to be a hero at all. The Demon Queen looked at him and asked if he really wanted to kill her. Alpha said it wasn't like that at all. It was all due to some stupid system settings. But now everything is different. All things considered, she's his savior. The Demon Queen said that it didn't matter, and since he was already here, she would like Alpha to help Lupinu will rule this world. Alpha was surprised. Lupin said he needed help saving this world. Alpha looked at Lupina, asked what the queen was talking about. The young man said that although he had been inactive for a long time, he had decided to take on the responsibility. He wanted to train and then save the world. Alpha looked at the hero and asked if he knew what his talent was. Lupin said he knows he doesn't have talent, but with two great mentors, he believes he can do it. Alpha looked at the hero and asked what he was talking about. Alpha said he was talking about something else. Before he could finish speaking, the Demon Queen closed his mouth. The Demon Queen looked at the legendary hero and asked him to wait a moment. Elizabeth said she needed to explain something to the child. Using her magic, the Demon Queen took Alpha and went behind the tree. A moment later, a loud crash was heard behind the tree. Alpha looked at the legendary hero and said he understood everything. He said that no matter what happened, he would always be by his side and would work with him. The Demon Queen looked at them and told them to stop chatting. She said they could begin their adventure in the outside world if Lupin will learn to handle a sword. A young woman happily shouted that the Grey Wolf Guild was recruiting new members and the pay was reasonable. She said that anyone considering a career change should check out the flyer. Another girl was shouting that crispy fried chicken was the best snack choice when you went to watch the guild competitions. They went to the city of Titano, which was under the control of the Holy Sword Guild. The Demon Queen looked at everyone present and said that her magical power told her that a large-scale event was about to take place in this city, and that there were a great many people here. Therefore, it was possible to obtain sufficient information. The young man looked at her and said that he knew that the first step to world domination was collecting information. Alpha looked at them and asked if they wanted him to accompany them, wasting their time in such a place. The Demon Queen looked at him sideways and asked if he would believe her if she told him she could break him in half. Alpha came closer to Lupinu and said that he was at his complete disposal at any time. The legendary hero saw leaflets on the ground. He picked one up in surprise and said they were lying everywhere. He asked the Demon Queen what kind of event was planned. The hero approached the Demon Queen and asked what the guild competition was. He asked her if she knew anything. Elizabeth said that the guilds send their representatives to compete. The young men saw a crowd of people heading to the competition. They also noticed that various bets were available there. Lepin took the Demon Queen's hand and asked if she wanted to go and see it too. The young man was surprised because he noticed that the arena was simply huge. At the entrance, a security guard stopped them and told them to stop, as his magical controller did not find their tickets. The legendary hero looked at his companion and told her to leave everything to him, and he would sort it out. The young man looked at the guard and said the flyer said the ticket cost 10 gold coins. He asked the guard if he could buy them now. The guard said with a grin that it was possible to buy them, but the remaining tickets were monopolized by him, and he was selling them for 200 gold. Lepin was shocked because he realized that there are also scammers in this world. The Demon Queen cast her magic on the guard. Instantly, he transformed. He approached them with a smile and said he would give them 2 VIP tickets. He asked them to accept the tickets and said it was a great honor to serve them. Lepin was surprised. He said the VIP area was truly luxurious. Tagore Cereris, the magician of letters, quietly smoked his pipe on the platform. Brian, the fifth blacksmith from the kingdom of the dwarves, was drinking beer. Luna Sogus, the orange sword, belonged to the Holy Sword Guild. Anasos, the purple sword, also belonged to the Holy Sword Guild. The girls sat quietly in the stands. Anna noticed the young people and asked Luna if they were on the guest list. Lepin said he was the first one in such a large arena, so he was a little nervous. The Demon Queen looked at her companion and told him to give her something to chew on. Anna glanced sideways at the young men and told her sister to keep an eye on them. Luna asked her sister if it was one of the guild members. She said that, after all, their leader had been very helpful. The host of the event looked at everyone present and said that they could move on to the finals of the guild competition. A moment later, he introduced himself and said he was the host. His name was Goblin Gob. He looked at everyone gathered and said that he would like to introduce the 4 participants who had made it to the finals. The genius swordsman of the Holy Sword Guild, Ching. The ferocious general of the Giant Bear Guild is Halo. Handsome from the Elf Guild, Travi. And last but not least, special guests from the Holy Sword Guild, a representative of the Card Guild. The host looked at everyone gathered and asked who would be the winner of this competition. The presenter looked at them and shouted that they were starting already. Travi glanced sideways at Galo of the Giant Bear Guild. He knew he looked too stupid. He thought he was probably just cannon fodder. Galo in turn shouted with rage that he would put him away. Regarding the newly formed Card Guild, the only reason they were eligible to participate in this competition was because they helped the Holy Sword Guild kill the demon pillars. He knew they were simply a second-rate guild affiliated with the Holy Sword Guild, represented only by their leader. He looked at everyone and realized that the only one who posed a threat to him was standing in front of him. It was Blue Sword from the Holy Sword Guild. Galo delivered his first blow to the ferocious bull. Travi looked at the blow and said that he was just a primitive barbarian. Galo caught the arrow. He was furious and shouted at Travi that he would die first. Travi used force. He used a grass cage. Travi looked at his opponent and said that such an uncultured beast as he should be taken away in a cage. Halo just grinned. He asked how he could be trapped with such rotten roots. Halo used his strength and used a bull ram, but he still couldn't break free. He was furious and didn't understand what was happening. Travi looked at his opponent and said that these were eucalyptus roots, and when struck, they would contract and release an extremely sticky liquid. The remaining opponents quickly and easily escaped the trap. Tavri was shocked and very angry. The blue sword cut through the trap with ease. He looked at his opponent and said that he apologized for destroying the plant. The young man looked at him and said with a grin that it didn't matter. He could pay with his life. Travi knew that defeating an enemy like him would bring him complete elation. With lightning speed, he drew his bow. He used the technique of the furious butterfly dance. The man took the blow with fortitude and calm. A few minutes later, he parried the enemy's attack using the bluebird technique. The blow was so powerful that the young man's arm was torn off. He was in shock and couldn't understand how this was possible. His opponent came closer to him and said that he had lost this fight. Travi looked at Chin and said that he truly deserved the title of Hero of the Holy Sword Guild. Travi told Chin not to forget that he too was a genius of the Elven Guild. With lightning speed, he struck. King parried his blow. Travi used magic and grew a flower near him. It was Healing Lily. Travi said the Holy Sword Guild is truly strong. A few minutes later, he began to absorb the flower. He looked at his opponent and said that his attacks were too simple and that was his weakness. Travi said that thanks to the blessing of the sacred tree, the elves became the strongest of all. Gola screamed and laughed. He was glad that the elf would be the first to die. He said that braggarts are the most annoying, and now it's his turn. King noticed some kind of ominous aura emanating from Halo. The spectators in turn shouted and rejoiced. They wanted to see a real fight. The goblin shouted and excited the crowd. He said that the first to leave the competition was the handsome Travi from the Elf Guild. He said how Travi left the competition didn't matter. What mattered now was whether the wounded Ching would be able to withstand the attacks. Ching took out his sword, which was stuck in the ground. Ching realized his opponent had used his sweat to escape the cage. But he knew he'd luckily used his sword to defend himself, so the damage was minimal. Halo, in turn, shouted that force solves everything. He was furious and shouted that he would crush everyone. He released 70% of his muscle power with lightning speed. Ching delivered 5 instant strikes in the air. They both landed on the ground. Gola looked at Ching and asked with a grin if that was all he was capable of. King was shocked. He noticed that his blade had been damaged in the battle. Gola struck again with fury and released 80% of his muscular strength. He struck a powerful blow that even bent the sword. Ching fell to the ground with the speed of lightning. He was shocked. Ching stared at his sword, which was curved. His opponent released 90% of his power and struck. Leping watched the tense fight closely. He noticed that it was an intense battle. Lepin asked the queen who she thought would win in the end. Anna was surprised that his dwarven-forged sword was broken in a single blow. Luna asked her sister if they should stop it. She said the Holy Sword Guild couldn't afford to be disgraced any further. Anna was shocked. She couldn't understand how the Giant Bear Guild had managed to become so powerful. She thought the Dark Guild must have helped them. She looked at her sister and said that there was no need for that yet. Hui, a member of the Holy Sword Guild, looked at Elder Bali and asked if he needed to intervene. Bali said that the two of them should be able to handle this on their own. He looked at Burrs and asked if he thought the same. Burrs, in turn, said that perhaps he was right. Burrs McGee is the head of the Card Guild, a former member of the Holy Sword Guild. The young man knew Burrs hated the Dark Guild, and the mere mention of the Apostle had him barely holding back. He could see Burrs shaking with anger. The young man didn't know what Burrs had gone through to want to create his own guild to fight monsters. Burrs spotted familiar faces in the crowd. He was shocked and couldn't understand how they had gotten there. He saw how Lepin asked Elizabeth what to do with them if they suddenly didn't live up to her expectations. The Demon Queen tenderly replied that they should all be killed. Burrs thought that most likely Mr. Lepin was here precisely because he wanted to test his use of cards and barley tea. But he knew that, fortunately, to meet his expectations, Burrs had mastered the basic skills, actively hunted apostles, and dedicated himself to maintaining peace on the continent. Gola struck for the Oradar. Ching knew that he had one last trump card left, but he was still not sure whether he could use it. But he still ordered himself not to doubt. He knew he must remember the Swordmaster's teachings. Ching knew that if he wanted to enter a state of selflessness, he had to cast aside all thoughts. But at that time, his opponent was crushing everything in his path. He used high-level earth rock magic. Gola looked at his opponent and asked him if he thought they only studied strength in the guild. He said they also studied earth magic. He said angrily that they were also not inferior to those high-level guilds. Gola saw a micro-cut and recoiled. With the speed of lightning, he flew away from the trap. He was in high fashion and very angry because he had lost his arm. King used the energy of the magic sword, which allowed him to escape from the trap. King was furious. Gola, in turn, shouted that he would kill him. Ching hit him, and he fell to the ground with a scream. Ching looked at his opponent and said that this was his last chance. He was angry and shouted at Chin not to play with him. He didn't expect the people from the Holy Sword Guild to have such powerful skills. He wasn't sure if he should use illegal drugs. Ching came closer to him and said that if he gave up the power given to him by the Dark Guild while he was still alive and of sound mind, he would spare his life. But he still didn't want to give up because he knew that once he reached the level of the Demon King, he would destroy everyone in his path. Ching struck a blow whose power crushed the enemy, and he lost his head. The young lady didn't know if she could defeat the enemy. She wondered if she should continue fighting. Previously in the Card Guild, the young lady slowly progressed to the next level. She knew that meditation and the transition to the next level took a lot of energy. But fortunately, she knew that the magical barley tea helped calm her thoughts and prevented her from getting lost in the universe of cards. She knew the tea had amazing effects. She was able to reach the level of a great demon spirit in a short time, despite her mediocre abilities. Burrs returned home and greeted his daughter as he entered the room. Elif was overjoyed that her father had returned home. She asked him what had happened to the Holy Sword Guild. She also asked if he was okay. He said the Dark Guild's invasion had been dealt with. But the Holy Sword Guild's internal problems were far more serious than he had expected. Burrs said that this time he had met the Swordmaster in person. Elif asked her father what they should do now. She said that without the Holy Sword's recognition, they would not be able to develop in the area and recruit people to bring fame to the Lacards. Pina. Burrs said that although he had not met the Master, he helped them repel the attacks of the Dark Guild and receive something unexpected. Elif saw the Great Apostle's dark mechanisms. She was surprised, as there were so many of them. She said she had the spirit level of a great demon, so she thought she could purify them in a single day. But she looked at her father in surprise and asked if this was something unexpected. He looked at her and said that wasn't all. He said that the Holy Sword Guild had allowed them to participate in the guild competition finals. She was very surprised, as she had never heard of guild competitions. Burrs said that if she took part in the competition and won, their card guild would be recognized. She was greatly surprised and didn't know how to do it. Elif explained that all the previous participants had been heroes, their strength at least on par with the demon sect, while she had only just reached the level of a great demon spirit. She said she was afraid she wouldn't be able to bring them glory and that they would thus be disgraced. She knew it would really complicate their lives, but her father told her it didn't matter. What mattered most was confidence and determination. He looked at her and said they weren't the same anymore. He looked at her and said that she could take Mr. Lowe's deck of cards with her. Pina. He said that this gap in levels would not make any difference. She understood that even though her father had told her to take Mr. Liu's deck of cards, Pina, but she still understood that with her power, she would be able to use it no more than 6 times. She knew that the rest of the battle would have to be fought with only copies of the cards, which would greatly reduce the power of her attack. But in order to properly honor the Master's cards, she must not retreat. She knew that determination was the key. She used the card cut and got rid of the trap. Elif stared at her enemy. He looked at her and said that hiding his strength and only acting at the end was a good strategy. He looked at her with disdain and said that she was still no match for him and asked her to just stay. He said their guild was in their debt and he didn't want to hurt them. Therefore, he said this was his last warning. The dwarf looked at them intently. He couldn't understand what kind of weapon she had used. Elif called for a card cut. Ching looked at her and asked if she really wanted to distract him with these simple tricks. He said her real goal was to impress him with other skills. Ching said she simply wouldn't get that chance. A moment later, he attacked her. Julia Lady was shocked because she realized that he had figured out her plan. But she still parried his blow with the speed of lightning, and she hung in the air. A moment later, she turned her power on him and struck him with all her fury. He parried her blow without hesitation. The young lady did not give up and dealt blow after blow. The young man aimed his power at her. He parried the blow, using his power to do so. He used his skill and summoned card shackles. The host was surprised. He said the card guild's fighting style was completely unique, and he didn't know what would happen next or how Ching, bound by cards, would react. King noticed that his magic was beginning to weaken. He was surprised as he realized the girl was absorbing his sword's chi with her own power. He looked at her with disdain and told her it was pointless. He said that if she wanted him to fight seriously, she should be prepared for him to kill her. A moment later, his sword energy increased. Elif looked at him and said that, of course, she knew the shackles wouldn't hold him for long, but it was enough to buy her some time. She was overjoyed, as she had been able to obtain the most powerful cards from the deck. A moment later, she released her power. The young lady released her power and attacked him with her peak dragon skill. Everyone present was in shock. They did not understand what it was and what kind of power the young lady had. They were shocked because they noticed that she first used a block attack and then followed it up with a summoning attack. The man looked closely at the fight. He said it was worth recording and studying. The dwarf watched the battle intently. He understood that various combinations could be used to achieve a variety of combat techniques, but he was still surprised and didn't know which master had crafted these cards. The legendary hero stared intently at the slaughter. He glanced sideways at the demon queen and said that they had cards. He said that it seemed that people from the outside world also knew how to use them to attack. The man used dedication and maximum energy of the sword. He launched a bluebird attack. In an instant, the cards scattered and the young lady shook from the impact. She was shocked, as her opponent was very strong. Elif knew she couldn't compensate for the level difference using only copies of cards. She knew that if she wanted to win, she had to use the real deck. But she also knew she still couldn't control it well enough to defeat her opponent. Qing looked at her and said that she really made him give it his all. He dealt her a crushing blow, and after the blow, he came closer to her and told her that it was all over now. He wanted her to accept her defeat and surrender. She looked at him and said with annoyance that she had lost after all. She knew it was nothing, and that was quite enough for her. She knew she had already brought glory to her guild. But a few minutes later, something appeared over his shoulder. Elif was shocked. She didn't understand what was looming over his shoulder as she saw dark energy. A few minutes later, an incomprehensible force possessed him. He was in shock and didn't understand what was happening. The force began to change the man from the inside. The young lady was in shock. She didn't understand what was happening. The young lady stared at the man, a demon of dark power hovering around him. The great apostle was very happy. He said with a grin that he was finally able to be born. He looked at the body he had managed to take possession of and said with a grin that this body was quite good and suited him. He launched one attack at Elif because he wanted to understand how to use power and how to use a sword properly. The host was shocked, unable to understand what was happening. He said his head suddenly popped out and took control of his body. In a trembling voice, the host said it seemed the situation was getting out of control. Everyone present was shocked. They trembled with fear and ran away, as they realized that someone from the Holy Sword Guild had become an apostle of the Dark Guild. Anna was shocked, unable to believe that Qing had become an apostle. They didn't know what to do about it. Watched everything intently, smoking his pipe. He said calmly that this was an unexpected turn of events. The legendary hero was shocked. He looked at the Demon Queen and asked her if they should intervene and help them. The Demon Queen looked at the legendary hero and said there was no need for them to interfere. She said that if he wanted to rule the world, he should get used to such small changes. Elizabeth told him to simply observe and also asked how he planned to rule the world in the future. The legendary hero was shocked. He watched the fight intently and said he understood everything and would not interfere. The man understood everything. Burrs understood that Lupin and the Demon Queen knew about this, so they came here to make sure they could handle this matter well. He knew they had to do everything right to satisfy Mr. Lupina and the Demon Queen. The man glanced sideways at Burrs. He knew that if he went to rescue his daughter, it would prove he didn't have enough people to deal with the Dark Guild. And since the Holy Sword Guild was recruiting new members, he wanted Burrs to return to them and become the new elder. The Dark Apostle was overjoyed as he liked his new body. He wanted to have a lot of fun with his new body and defeat all opponents weaker than himself. The young lady realized this was the work of a Dark Guild. She knew she had to prove herself and defeat the Dark Guild's apostle. The apostle looked at the young lady and asked what kind of manners she had. Elif looked at him with disdain and said that her opponent was the Dark Guild, and she had nothing to worry about now. The apostle was shocked. He couldn't understand what kind of powerful magic was emanating from her. With a smirk and fury, he said that she must be killed immediately and on the spot. The young lady used real cards to protect herself and everyone else. She used 5 divine protector bombs. The legendary hero was shocked. He did not understand why the young lady's attacks seemed so familiar to him. Pin was sure that her technique and reception were familiar to him, and that he had seen them somewhere. The gnome was shocked, unable to understand what was happening. He noticed that, compared to the cards he'd seen before, the latest one seemed even more incredible. He was confused and wanted to know what would happen next. The man was shocked because he noticed the girl had summoned a phantom. He knew these were the 30 holy warriors mentioned in the books. He was shocked because he didn't know if they really existed, as he had never seen anything like them before. The man looked sideways at Bursa, asked if this was the same technique he used to defeat one of the 6 pillars. He was confused, as he had never seen anything like it before. Burrs said he used 9s back then, and Ilif now uses 5s. Burrs, his voice trembling, said he hoped it would be enough. He was deeply worried about his daughter and hoped she could handle the Dark Guild Apostle. The young lady glared at the apostle and angrily told him to get out of Qing's body. She felt sorry for the young man who had been possessed by the Dark Apostle. The apostle was shocked. He did not understand where ordinary cards could get so much power from. He looked at her and said with a smirk that he was retreating for now, but would return to her later, after he was finished with this body. He had no intention of giving up so easily. He was in shock, unable to comprehend what was happening. The apostle of the Dark Guild couldn't understand how this was possible. He had just been born. He screamed that he couldn't die so easily. He desperately wanted to live and wreak havoc. The apostle used all his skill and employed his most powerful and potent fighting technique. The Dark Guild Apostle was confident that with such might he could defeat the girl. After using the body's former owner's sword of rage, he unexpectedly found himself trapped. He couldn't understand how this was possible. He was in shock and did not understand how he could have fallen into a trap. The young lady sealed it in a sacred cube. A moment later, she launched another attack. The great apostle shouted at her not to do this, as it was unnecessary. He had no desire to die such a death. The young lady used her power to trap the apostle. A moment later, he shrank back into the trap. The great apostle of the Dark Guild was furious, screaming with fury. A moment later, Qin's body, possessed by the great apostle of the Dark Guild, fell to the ground with a crash. Elif, in turn, fell to her knees beside the body. The young lady was shocked. She realized she had accidentally struck a very powerful blow, and in doing so, had lost a great deal of her vitality. Burrs glanced sideways at the legendary hero and said that now, after such a fight, he and the Demon Queen should be satisfied with their result. The legendary hero looked at Elizabeth and said that it turned out she was someone they knew. He said with a smile that it was no wonder now why she seemed familiar to him. Pin looked at her and asked if Elizabeth remembered her, as she and her father had visited them a few months ago. The Demon Queen turned back in an instant. Elizabeth glanced sideways at Bursa, who was sitting behind them on the podium, asked if he had really disguised his precious daughter so poorly. Burrs realized he had been exposed and seen. He was puzzled, as he hadn't expected such a turn of events. The man bowed low and said in a trembling voice that he hadn't meant to spoil their viewing experience. Burrs said that was why he hadn't bothered them. A moment later, he apologized for that. The legendary hero was shocked. He didn't expect to see his friend, but still, Le Pen was delighted to see him. He was eager to chat with his friends after the battle was over. The legendary hero stood and greeted the man. Le Pen said he didn't expect them to be here too. Le Pen said with a smile that he had just realized that Elif had been fighting there in the hall. He added with a smile that he now had many questions for Burrs. Burrs was shocked because he heard that Mr. Lapina had many questions for him. Burrs wondered if Mr. Le Pen and the Demon Queen were disappointed with their card-fighting skills. He feared they had let down their lord and queen with their performance in the arena. The man looked sideways at Birsa because he did not understand who this man was, whom the great and universally respected Birsa respected so much.